Sweet.
And it was so funny. My ex-husband thought it was going to be his truck work dog. Not so much.
Right, it is 7:15, so I will call this special meeting of the City Council to order. City Clerk, can we please have a roll call? 6:15.
Councilmember Hanson Romero,
Here.
Councilmember Jordan,
Here.
Councilmember Lopez,
Here.
Vice Mayor Mickey,
Here.
and Mayor Tiedemann.
Here. We now go to our closed session item. We will have public comment and then go into our closed session. Is there any public comment online, seeing as I do not see any in the room?
Go ahead, Jeremiah.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everybody. Yeah, just two questions. What is the case number for this Lions Club case for Albany Hill? And also, what courthouse jurisdiction is this? Is it Oakland Courthouse, Martinez? Is it Supreme Court, Superior Court? So yeah, just I guess when you come back from closed session, or maybe after my questions here, can you please let me know the case number and the courthouse jurisdiction, please? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And looking at the agenda materials, I can say that this is in the Alameda County Superior Court, and this is case number 22CV010822. Is that all correct? Are there any other public comments online?
No.
Seeing none, we will now go into closed session.
I read it right here from the dice?
Okay, Aaron, I'm timing you. Okay.
Okay, I will call this regular now meeting of the City Council to order. And we have our land acknowledgement, which tonight will be read by Councilmember Hanson Romero.
The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lejeune. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home.
Thank you. City Clerk, can we please have the roll call?
Councilmember Hanson Romero,
Here.
Councilmember Jordan,
Here.
Councilmember Lopez,
Here.
Vice Mayor Mickey,
Here.
and Mayor Tiedemann.
Here. We now go to item 3, which was report on action taken in closed session. There was no reportable action. That brings us to ceremonial matters, where we have a proclamation on Black History Month. Accepting it, I believe we'll have Alexia from the Black Parent Advisory Group and Cynthia from who's the president of the AHS Black Student Union, and to read and present will be Councilmember Lopez. And we'll have Councilmember Lopez read it out and present, and then we'll have time for our honorees to say something, and then the public.
All right. In recognition of Black History Month, February 2023, whereas Black History Month in February celebrate the achievements and contributions that African Americans have made and the central role of African Americans in U.S. history. And whereas Black History Month, we remember and reflect on the struggles faced by African Americans to be treated equally throughout their lives. And whereas historian and author Dr. Carter G. Woodson founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History in 1915 and initiated the first Negro History Week in February 1926. The particular week selected for the inclusion of the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, two key figures in the history of African Americans, and whereas the selected theme for 2023 is Black Resistance, to recognize the efforts by African Americans to resist historic and ongoing oppression and to advocate for a dignified, self-determined life in a just democratic society. And whereas African Americans have achieved triumph and progress as seen in the end of chattel slavery, dismantling of Jim and Jane Crow segregation in the South, increased political representation at all levels of government, desegregation of educational institutions, the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the opening of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History in Washington, D.C., and increased and diverse representation of African American experiences in media. And whereas Black History Month also recognizes the important, though often untold roles and achievement African Americans have played in our history, identity, culture, economy, literature, sports, and politics. And whereas the city is thankful to the ongoing leadership within our community, including the work by the Albany High School Black Student Union and Albany Unified School District Black Parent Advisory Group. Now, therefore, the Albany City Council does hereby proclaim February 2023 as Black History Month in the City of Albany. We acknowledge the contributions of African Americans in our community and encourage the Albany community to learn about the history of African Americans' response to establish safe spaces where African American life can be sustained, fortified, and respected.
Thank you, and thank you for having me this evening. On behalf of the Albany Black Parent Advisory Group, My name is Alexia Ritchie. I'm the retired Executive Director of Student Services for the Albany Unified School District and the proud parent of 2 Albany High graduates. The Black Parent Advisory Group was established 8 years ago. The district also works with a number of other affinity groups. I'd like to elevate Latina Familias, our LGBT families, our Jewish parent group, our disability squad, among other affinity groups. The district works diligently with the parents and with the families on behalf of the students, of the district, and again, of the families. I really want to thank you for having this proclamation tonight. I would also like to mention we're having a fundraiser at Juanita and Maud's. That is on February 22nd. It is a fundraiser for the Student Scholarship Fund that we have at Albany High School for both Albany High and McGregor High School graduates. Thank you.
I'd like to just really say thank you, and I appreciate recognizing Black History Month as a full month in Albany. It's very respectful, and it means so much to the students at Albany, especially BSU, which is a club at Albany High School. And we do so many events during this month, and it's amazing for you to recognize it so that our events are both publicized and attended to at its maximum and fullest. So thank you.
Thank you both for your comments. We have a comment or a question?
Yeah, if I may. Could you let us know when the fundraiser at Juanita and Maud is taking place? What time on that day?
Yes, thank you. I would like to highlight the partnership with Juanita and Maud, a locally owned restaurant on San Pablo. They are hosting our fundraiser on Wednesday, February 22nd. If you mention Albany schools, the proceeds of that evening's till will go to our scholarship fund. Again, that's Wednesday, February 22nd at Juanita and Maud's on San Pablo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comment or question from council? If not, is there any public comment?
Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is Jeremiah Garrett Pinguello. You know, I couldn't think of any better person to accept that award except for Miss Ritchie. I'm really glad to see her still around, and I'm really glad to see her accept this this recognition, Black History Month. I'm just really proud to see Alexia Ritchie there. Also, I just want to give a shout out to our former mayor, Janelle Gary, who is African American as well. Let she not be forgotten for all the success and accomplishments she did while in office. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any further comments online? Okay. That will bring us to our next item, which is the city manager report. City manager, can we please have your report?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank the council for the proclamation for Black History Month, and following up on that, our staff has prepared a number of events as well as posting at our community center, really as an opportunity to learn more about the month and recognition of all the important aspects therein. You see a photo image of it here. This is displayed at our community center, as well as the poster that you also see on our website, and links on our website to additional information and resources as well. We have recently completed the pilot project installation for the Canes Adams Bikeway. And some mailings have gone out about this in terms of the intention of the project and the approach to using the newer installations. This pilot project is intended to provide a safer north-south cycling route parallel to San Pablo Avenue and improve cycling access to destinations along San Pablo Avenue. You can see our website page here where we will continue to post information. Also, as stated on our webpage and in our mailers, this is a pilot project, meaning we will be monitoring it throughout the year, reporting back to both the Transportation Commission and the council with regard to findings of effectiveness of the program. In line with that, we also are looking to the Alameda County Transportation Commission in their leadership in developing 3 complementary projects to our San Pablo Avenue corridor improvements. As displayed here, these include pedestrian and bicycle crossing improvements, bus stop upgrades and relocations, and parallel street improvements to calm traffic and make biking safer and more comfortable. You can get more information on all of these projects via email to sanpablo@alamedaactc.org or call 510-208-7400, and also a link to their website, which is alamedaactc.org/San Pablo to get to this specific page. We have a theme. I will continue on transportation safety. The local roadway safety plan is finding its way through completion. This plan helps identify priorities to enhance traffic safety for all modes of transportation and for all ages and abilities. A draft of the plan is now available for review and comment until February 17th at albanysafestreets.com under project updates. And a link to the website is albanysafestreets.com. Updates from Public Works. The fields are beginning to reopen. Thank everyone for their patience with that. The ball fields at Ocean View and Memorial Parks are reopening this week following the winter refresh. The grass lawn at Jules Terrace Park and a portion of South Lawn at Memorial Park also underwent the same rehab, but remain closed a little longer to allow further grass growth. Thank you again for your patience, and we hope that the grass will stay as long as it can with our well-loved parks. Also, thank you for your patience with all of the paving and construction projects that we seem to have experienced falling into each other. Hopefully you're seeing the progress that has resumed based on our ability to adapt to the weather and climate demands. And for any major construction alerts, we will be continuously posting to our website, shown here, albanyca.org/construction alerts. You can also sign up to get e-notifications on construction alerts. We have a tax services for seniors presentation, which will be held at the Community Center every Thursday starting February 9th through April 13th. Appointments are required and space is limited. To reserve a space, you can stop by in person to our senior center or call 510-524-9122. We also have a paratransit workshop scheduled for February 17th at 1 p.m. The Recreation and Community Services Department will host this workshop at the Senior Center and provides information and insight into the various services offered by the city and county paratransit systems. It's a free workshop and rides are available to the location upon request as well. And lastly, just another encouragement for members of our community interested in getting involved in local government. A great introductory way to do that is by applying for our remaining advisory body vacancies. We continue to be accepting applications. There is a link on our website for that application. You can also come into City Hall to receive that application as well. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Seeing none, we'll go to public comment. If anyone attending would like to ask a question about or comment on the city manager's report, please press raise your hand. You'll have 1 minute. If you're on the phone, please raise your hand by pressing *9. This is for questions and comments on the city manager's report only. Comments on matters not on the agenda will happen next. In this and all comments and questions during the meetings, please address the council, not other attendees, and respect each person that has spoken, as the council wants everyone to feel comfortable speaking and not be intimidated by others' comments or reactions.
Good evening. My name is Jeremiah Garrett Pinguello. I'm not sure if I heard the city manager mention the executive order state of California regarding virtual meetings. This city council meeting, I know city managers mentioned it every city council meeting for the past couple of years. But I just want to bring to attention city manager, city council, city attorney, AB 361 expires March 1st. And also AB 2449 will take over March 1st when AB 361 expires. So I was just wondering, what the next steps the city has done to prepare for 361 to expire and 2449 to take place. Other than that, the Keynes Avenue project, the pilot program, I was wondering if we could do a public question and answer. I know it's a new thing, and we just mentioned we're going to take up to a year to find out what works. So please have a public question and answer. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and questions. None others? City manager, I know we've discussed what's going to happen when the law changes around meetings and such. I don't know if you have a brief answer.
Sure, Mayor. You'll see item 7.6 on your agenda under the consent calendar continues AB 361, and I will note as just advised that this will be the last time that the council will be adopting under AB 361. We do transition to the other opportunity. I will defer to our city attorney to summarize that. Thank you.
AB 2449 went into effect January 1. We've already utilized it. I believe at your last meeting, we had 2 council members who utilized it. It can be used for just cause, or it can be used for emergency circumstances. Just cause is defined. It includes being away at like a city conference, having a contagious illness, having to care for someone, an immediate family member that doesn't allow you to attend in person. Those are some of the examples that can be used for just cause. There are limitations to using it. However, that'll be how we will be moving forward. And then traditionally, there's what I'll call the old-fashioned way of teleconferencing, where you have to list your location on the agenda. That still applies.
Great, thank you. Be sad to see that resolution go. We've gotten so used to it being on every agenda. There was the other question of, are there any planned meetings or anything about the pilot program?
Yeah, we've received some ideas about how to further engage with the community, specifically the streets where the changes have happened directly, and we'll be pursuing those further to ensure we get that component of input as well.
Great, thank you. I believe that brings us to good of the city. This is for attendees to provide the council comments, information, and questions on items that are not on the agenda. Please raise your hands now or press *9. By state law known as the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss items that are not on the agenda except under extraordinary circumstances. Rather, they may be referred to future agenda or staff for comment.
Good evening. On March 13, 2020, the editorial board of Washington Post wrote the following about the horse racing industry. No other accepted sport exploits defenseless animals as gambling chips. No other accepted sport tolerates the cruelties that routinely result in the injury and death of these magnificent animals. The rot in horse racing goes deep. It is a sport that has outlived its time. I would argue that it's not even a sport. It's a gambling industry, which always wins and shares its exploits from betting with various governmental entities in order to buy protection and respectability. It's nonsensical to expect that the industry would stop abusing the horses, since its existence depends on making the race fiercely competitive and attractive to the wagering crowds. Without using painful instruments of control, horses wouldn't race against each other due to their social habits of living peacefully in herds. Racing also defies the anatomy of horses. They have fragile bones and ankles the size of a human's, which cannot tolerate 12,000-pound loads to strike the ground for a long time in high speed. The outcome would be fractures, breakage of their bones, and euthanasia. Horses are not stupid. They wouldn't do that if they are not forced to. California can't be expected to regulate the horse racing industry for the sake of the welfare of the horses either. Excuse me. To respond to the outrage caused by the death of a large number of horses in Santa Ana in 2019, Governor Newsom granted California Horse Racing Board the authority to protect the welfare of the horses too, which it cannot do in a meaningful way because of its mandate to protect the wagering profits. All its members are ex-industry connected people, and there is no representative there from nonprofit animal welfare groups. The board has never suspended any license as a result of rule breaking or causing the death of a horse. It allows injecting the horses with Lasix up to 4 hours 4 hours before a race, and recently, okay, so I went slower than I practiced.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Tracy Brown, and I know some of you from, I'm grateful that you're in office. Thank you for your service. I just found out about a issue that I think the closed meeting might have been about on the Albany Hill, the cross, and I kind of have a unique perspective. I've been an Albany resident and homeowner since, 2002, so 20 years. And I was agnostic when I moved here. Actually, for 30 years, I was agnostic. So I feel like I have a unique vantage point. And I remember I'm on the Albany Hill as well. And I remember going on hikes there. It's much nicer now, so I go there more often now. But and wondering why there was a cross there. That this was Albany. I don't know. I just was like, that's strange. And when I was agnostic, I explored all sorts of other religions, Buddhism and this and that. So I'm a very embracing type person, and never really understood. And recently, now I know a little bit, and I don't know all the politics and all the details, but I do know that I understand that the cross was there since like 1973, and I think there's an easement, and there's Lions Club is involved, and it was private land, but then the city bought or has the land, the park. So I don't know all the details, but I just know a little bit. And I just wanted to say, as a citizen, I was dismayed that there's a lawsuit, because it's like taxpayer money. And also now that it was a very gradual process for me, I kind of became deist, acted as if that maybe there's a God, and then I gradually came into faith and didn't know all that time what I was rebelling against. It was more like a cultural allergic reaction to how some Christians practice, or my misunderstanding. I didn't know the kind of the character and the imitation of Jesus. And so I know I'm in the minority in this city now, like going from being agnostic to a person of faith. I was married to a Jewish man. Anyway, I want the best for all people. I want peace, and I also don't want our city to waste funds. And this to me is an outdoor church for lots of people, even before I came into a faith. So I just hope that there's some consideration of that, even though it might not be popular, that it kind of supports diversity. And I can't imagine, it's like a church being moved.
Thank you for your comment.
After all the history that has been there. So thank you for letting me speak.
For people who want to speak,
Hello.
if you can line up. Thank you.
Hi, City Council members. Thank you for being here at night in the cold. I have talked about Golden Gate Fields racetrack in the past, and I will continue to speak about it as long as it's here. So at the last meeting, I highlighted California Penal Code 597, which Golden Gate Fields racetrack violates every time a horse is injured or dies at their gambling facility. But I would also like to point out a law that they violated, another law that they violated, this time resulting in not only more horse deaths, but the death of an employee at the track. In March of 2020, Governor Gavin Newsom issued the California Public Health Order that required all non-essential businesses to shutter. However, I noticed that Golden Gate Fields racetrack continued to conduct races regardless. So on March 18th, 2020, I filed Albany Police Report number 2003-180-048 with Officer Ryan Welsh here at the Albany Police Department. He told me that David Dugan, the manager of Golden Gate Fields, had personally told the Albany police chief that the Alameda County Department of Public Health had given him special permission to continue racing and operating his business. So when I contacted the Alameda County Department of Public Health to verify this very unusual exemption, they stated unequivocally that this was absolutely false and immediately sent an officer out to shut them down. However, less than 3 weeks later, Golden Gate Fields racetrack gambling facility reopened and continued racing. And this happened 2 more times over the course of 2020. The result of this action was that they had the biggest COVID outbreak in the Bay Area, with over half of the undocumented workers who live and work at the track. Over half of the workers who live and work there contracted COVID-19, and 1 trainer died from COVID-19. And of course, more horses died by the end of 2020 as well, 27 horses total. Our laws were put in place to protect the health and welfare of our citizens, as you guys well know, because you work with them all the time. So I feel that we should not allow Golden Gate Fields racetrack to break these laws. David Dugan reported to the San Francisco Business Times that the total wagering at Golden Gate Fields for 2020 was $5 million, I don't even know how to say this number, almost $5.5 million. And he was happy that it was only a decline of 1.3% from 2019. However, so that was the San Francisco Business Times, But however, to the Berkeley side, he expressed deep concern about the COVID-19 outbreak. So,
Thank you for your comment.
thank you.
Hi, my name is Caroline Lehman. I thank you all for your service, being on the City Council and what you do for the city. I would like to talk about communication and how difficult it is within the 3 major pools, if you like, of people in this city. That is the City Council, the school board, and the community. And within the community, of course, we have a whole lot of parents of kids who go to school in Albany, but then there are the rest of us who had kids in the school and are still interested in supporting it. So I get the Albany update or whatever it is every month, but it doesn't have very much information. For example, if I hadn't been here before to listen to Alexis speaking, I wouldn't know about the event at Juanita and Maud. That seems to me to be something that should be in that Albany update. That's something that the whole community ought to be able to participate in. We shouldn't expect just the people who have kids in school to be the supporters of the school. It's the whole community. So, there used to be something called the Community Media Access Committee, but I understand that that's been sunsetted. If there's some event happening in Albany, how do we publicize it? How does anybody get to do anything or add anything into that document that comes out once a month to let people know what's going on? Another case in point, the police commission isn't, I noticed it doesn't have very many people nominated to serve on it. It's a critical committee. It's going to be Black History Month this month. I think there's an interesting connection there. But if you don't advertise that this thing is available for people to join, then you don't have much diversity. You just get the same old people showing up again and again. And we need to hear from the new voices, the new people. What better way, since you've already got something that goes out to everybody, why not put stuff in there that is of interest to the whole community? And also publicize who one should get in touch with in order to use that mode of communication. Anyway, I thank you for your time. Is my time up? Almost. Okay. Anyway, I just really think that communication is critical, and we're not doing it very well. And I don't understand why not in this day and age. There ought to be a better way to do it, and it would really enrich our whole community if we had access.
Thank you for your comment.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Go ahead, Margie.
Hi, this is Margie Marks. I want to report on something great that's going on in our community, and I'm glad that I'm following up right after Carolyn, because it's something that's going on at the high school right now. They are collecting prom attire and bling that includes clothes, purses, jewelry, wraps, ties, and shoes. They can be left at the bins right inside the front door of Albany High School between 8 and 4. The deadline is March 4th. One of the charges of CMAC was to facilitate communication between the school district and the city. The last council sunsetted it. I guess they think communications are okay. I don't know. But this project of facilitating communications between the school and the city should not be abandoned. I agree with Carolyn. I think in the weekly email, the city could have a box for the school district. And so if people don't want to read what's going on in the school, they don't have to. I, for one, am interested, and I think we should get the entire community involved when the school is doing things and they need help from the community. They're all our children. We need to get involved in that. I also believe with the racetrack, I know the city has no control over it, but I wish the city could send a letter to the state and say, put an animal rights advocate on that horse racing board. I mean, I think that would be just the least you could do. There were over 2 horses every month that died, I think, last year. And as a citizen of Albany, that is very disturbing to me. And I think the letter would be a very small thing, but we need to somehow let the state know that we're not happy with that board. The last thing I wanted to say is last year, we had an African-American council member who seemed to really steward the activities around Juneteenth. And I hope that this year we will have another Juneteenth. And I would really like the city to try to open that up and have a dialogue on race in our city. I think we need to discuss what's going on in our community and in the world and in the country. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for your comment.
Yeah, hi, good evening. This is Jeremiah Garrett Pinguello. I mean, I echo all the public speakers before. You know, the Albany Hill is such a dividing topic. I always try to stay away from it. But, you know, to me, I thought, you know, freedom of religion was something in America. I just didn't know that you can't express freedom of religion in America. I just wasn't aware of that. And also regarding Golden Gate Fields, yeah, I'm actually online with the Albany Police Department right now with the dispatcher to get a case number to let the public know. Back in 2022, May 2nd, about May 2nd, May 1st, there was an incident of Golden Gate Fields employees, jockeys, horse tenders. They had kidnapped a woman from Target in the parking lot and brought to Golden Gate Fields residential area. And the female was used and abused overnight. And this female had reached out to me when it happened. And at the time, I was taking a job that night at the Port of Oakland. I'm security for Longshore, and I reported to a customs officer. And the customs officer, they did an investigation at Golden Gate Fields. This woman that was abducted, she actually grabbed a passport from one of the bedrooms at the residence at Golden Gate Field, where she was stuffed in a cage all night. And customs had went down to Golden Gate Fields and did a raid the following day and found out the passport was counterfeit and those people were actually deported. So Albany Golden Gate Fields is involved in, human trafficking, illegal immigrants, violent crimes, and this all happened at our local Target. So I just, it could happen to anybody. Also, on a much lighter note, I guess, the crossing guards is an ongoing issue. We only have 6 crossing guards for 6 schools in Albany. That's 1 crossing guard per school. It's not enough. I would recommend to City Council finding a bigger budget to increase it from 6 to 12 crossing guards, 2 per school. I know Marin's under construction right now, but we need more crossing guards. The lady at Talbot, Beverly, on Talbot and Solano, the Albany Police Department actually took pictures and reported her to her supervisor for stopping traffic last week during construction. So the police are actually throwing the crossing guards under the bus. We need more support for crossing guards. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, it's David Danby. And regarding the proclamation for Black History Month, shouldn't the Albany community be doing more than just acknowledging Black History Month? Under the leadership of Janelle Gary, we are now celebrating Juneteenth. That was a good start, but we have a long way to go. After the murder of George Floyd, the city hired consultants to help us deal with racism in Albany. There were many online meetings and lots of folks participated, some sharing very personal and troubling memories of how they were treated by citizens and the police based on their race. The result of that effort was a slow-moving process to create a policing commission. 2.5 years later, the commission is finally coming together. Now the council is involved with making appointments to the commission. Will this commission be made up of citizens from Albany that reflect the diversity and varied life experiences of Albany's population? Or will it be made up of citizens who have been deeply involved in Albany's city government and the relatively conservative approach to governance here? As an agenda item at your next meeting, I ask you, City Council, to answer that question so all of us can hear your replies. I recommended one of the commission's top priorities would be to review how qualified immunity affects how the police department might be held accountable or not accountable for questionable policing. Another priority for the commission would be to review the case that involved an 11-year-old Black citizen of Albany who was chased by adults who wanted to beat and hurt her. The police officers involved determined these adults were just expressing their First Amendment right and did nothing. It seems to me that the Instagram racism situation 6 years ago still lingers over us. The Ninth Circuit Court's ruling recently brought it back, and Dashka Slater's book, Accountable, due to be released in August of this year, no doubt will cause a lot of attention for Albany. Finally, I recommend that the city government and council reach out to the superintendent of schools and the school board to work on establishing more cooperative efforts for dealing with racism in Albany. From a post I recently read, it sounds as if there are still pockets of racism in our schools. Both the council and the board should be working cooperatively with each other along with all of us in the community to competently deal with these issues. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Evening, Mayor Tiedemann and City Council members. I'm Jackie Hermes Fletcher, and I would like to ask how the City Council is planning better communication between schools, the council, and with its citizens in the future. Sometimes I feel in the dark around many issues regarding communication, even though I am connected to e-news and your meeting minutes. I hope you can please bring forward better ways to answer important questions and discussions from your constituents. Maybe a public forum is in order. Through KALB, I think maybe you all can figure creative ways other than these meetings to communicate to the citizens of Albany what you're discussing, what citizens want answered. Also, I read the San Francisco Chronicle today with the headline, Big Disparities in Police Stops. On page A7 was information about the gap in police stop rates between blacks and whites. Many cities were represented. Statistics from Albany were missing. I would like to request the City Council take steps to make these police statistics of the Black, white, and Latinos available for your community, maybe in the e-news or through other widely dispersed messages. I would also like for the council to appoint people of color to the police commission. It's very important to show that you are on the side of all your citizens. As a lifelong teacher, I also promote the addition of crossing guards in Albany. Thank you for your time and for representing our city.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, my name is Brian Martin. I had two things I wanted to comment on. One was the Adams Keynes project. I live on Adams Street, and I wanted to thank the city for finally implementing this. The originally envisioned as a regional solution to transit, it's now clear that we need infrastructure for bikes and e-scooters and so forth more than ever before, as we're anticipating hundreds of drivers moving into the bowling alley project in the near future and thousands more up and down San Pablo Avenue with very few places to park off street. And so the more that people can get around, who are able to not use cars, can get around with fewer or no cars, the better off we will all be. And then also, I think a common concern for e-scooters and bikes is to keep them off the sidewalk. And so the more we can make the streets inviting, the better off we'll all be. Some organized group that was opposing the project warned literally of anarchy and chaos that would ensue. And as I look out my front door and walk around and drive around and bike around, it just seems incredibly peaceful, and I'm glad that I can enjoy some of the benefits of the project, and we'll see how it goes. The other thing I wanted to, and parking is also the fact that the parking situation is so far being treated the way it has been in Berkeley for the last 50 years on similar streets has really helped to keep the drama low, and that's very helpful. The other thing I wanted to comment on was the cross on Albany Hill. I wanted to thank the city for its work to rectify the constitutional violation and do it in such a way that preserves the parkland. The federal judge clearly said that a sizable portion of public land would need to be sold, and the cross there on the hill may be very comforting to many people, but to some people, but to many others it represents lots of other things, and certainly doesn't represent the strengths of the city. The Lions themselves, they have every right in the world to the individual members to worship whatever gods they wish in whatever ways they wish. The club itself is a different matter. The club, as we've seen over the years, has clearly gone rogue as deciding that it's like a church in some way, and working against its own bylaws. And I, as a service organization, wish they could have resolved this with the city in a way that doesn't impact the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, everyone. I guess I'd like to start out by just saying thank you. I second what was said by the other commenters, Margie, Jackie, Carolyn, and David. I support everything they said. Regarding the horse racing, I know, as Margie pointed out, that you probably don't have any power over it, but I think that actually I would like to see it on as an agenda item. I don't know if that's possible since you don't have any, it's not in your purview, but I think that there's enough concern being expressed that people are confused about what you can do and can't do. And I'm wondering if you could do what Margie suggested, simply write a letter. So I would like to see a discussion about that rather than people keep showing up and expressing their heartfelt concern, and then you just say thank you and then never say anything else about it. I really was going to talk about that I watched the recording of your training with this consultant, and I appreciate being able to see it. It was interesting to see you all interacting, and I hope you found it helpful. However, I have to say I was struck by the dominance of whiteness in the room, the city manager, the assistant city manager, 3 council members, and the consultant. I know that you're not able to choose consultants and businesses based on race because of a California state law that an effort was made to rescind it and it failed. But I would like to see you consider different life experiences and worldviews and a much more expansive search for consultants and others that you pay with our money. I've emailed the city staff to see if I can find out the race and ethnicity of our past consultants, or at least their names so I can look it up myself. But I'm guessing they're predominantly white and probably also predominantly cisgender male. A true commitment to diversity rather than simply an annual proclamation that you give so proudly would be greatly appreciated by the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
That's it.
That's it. There was one question there that I'm going to see if staff has an easy answer for. If there is an event that wants to be publicized, is there a staff person they can get in contact with besides emailing the whole city council, which they can always do, which we can then refer it on? But is there anyone specific for that sort of thing?
Sorry, Mayor, an event specific to?
The example was the parents group fundraiser event to get something like that in e-news or anything of
Sure.
that nature?
You know, actually, more information on that. We're actively engaged with all of the affinity groups surrounding recognition events, and that information is being loaded onto our website as we speak. So that communication is already underway.
Thank you. I believe that brings us to the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. By approval of the consent calendar, the staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified, and there will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a member of the audience requests removal of the item. Does any council member wish to discuss an item separately or pull it from consent? Seeing none. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on an item that is on the consent calendar?
Hi, so I was going to ask for 7.4 and 7.5 to be taken off, but so that they could be discussed separately, but I should just go ahead and comment? Is that what you're saying? And I don't need to do that whole take it off thing?
I prefer that we have everyone who wants to discuss something identify it, and then we go to each item. So I've noted down that you want to comment on 7.4 and 7.5, and we'll come back to that. Is there anyone else with item they? Okay, then please have your comment on item 7.4 first, which is the advisory body appointments.
Julie, go ahead. Julie, go ahead.
I don't, can you hear me? Because I didn't get my little unmute thing.
Yes,
can you
we
hear
can
me?
hear you.
Oh, sorry, usually there's a little box that says unmute. Okay, so for both of these items, 7.4 and 7.5, I'm concerned about the recycling of community members on committees and commissions. I don't know if this is because they're the only people applying or if preference is being given to people who have been involved in the city over many years. For example, Michael Barnes is a really good example of that. I appreciate the involvement and commitment of community members, I really do, but sometimes it's time to bring in new voices and new perspectives. I know that the response to that is frequently these people are people with what's so-called institutional knowledge, and I can see how that might make it easier for the city staff, but it's much easier for people to learn facts than it is for someone to look at the city and the community and change and provide fresh insights and into that come from their own worldview. So it's, yes, nice to have institutional knowledge, but better to have somebody who has an open mind and is looking for things from has a different life experience. If the issue is that there are few applicants, then as I've remarked many, many times, and then you heard tonight very many times, the city needs to get information to community members through other venues besides email and the city website. So this is a good example, just happened. City manager said that's coming out, going to be put on our website as of, it's happening right now. But what about all the other people in Albany who aren't looking at your website and aren't signed up for your e-news? Those people don't know anything about it. And I can tell you that that's true because one important agenda item comes up and I ask my neighbors, I ask people randomly, I look at the community center if there's something about it. There's nothing. 99% of the people in this city do not know what's going on because you're not doing a good job. And I think that if you are truly committed to diversity and inclusion, you will figure it out. Maybe a commission or a committee whose only task is to keep the community informed, similar to what was assigned to one of the tasks that was for CMAC, which you sunsetted. So I would like to see, as shown tonight, the city is capable of creating documents. For example, the one about the, Black History Month. So all of a sudden the city is going to produce something. I'd like to see that kind of enthusiasm spread to everything because the people in the city need to hear what's going on and they need to think that you think it's important that they know. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I saw another hand go up on this, I'm assuming on this item.
Thank you, Jeremiah Garapingola here regarding the same items, appointments. I had a question. So let's say people have applied for a commission or committee, some vacancies, and the city council, nobody's appointing anybody to that commission or committee, even though people have applied. What's the procedure, and how long does city council, how long is it before someone finally gets appointed? I remember last year, if a city council member didn't appoint somebody, I guess the mayor stepped in just to go ahead and appoint somebody. For instance, Rochelle Nason wasn't appointing anybody for months and months and months. And so there was a vacancy. And so maybe it was due to the fact that nobody had applied. That could have been it. But let's say there are applicants who've applied for commissions or committees. I know myself speaking, I've applied again for the Social and Economic Justice Commission. And I applied a few months back. And I was just wondering, now tomorrow there's supposed to be a Social and Economic Justice Commission, but the meeting is canceled because there's no quorum, because city council members are withholding appointing somebody to a commission. So it's kind of a catch-22 when there's this advisory body that's ready to meet, ready to advise city council, but the city council refuses to appoint anybody to that commission, even though there are applicants that have applied. So how many months go by when applicants are just sitting in queue waiting to be assigned and appointed to a commission, and city council is just sitting back and assessing, oh, do we get a better candidate? So I'm just wondering how long, is there a policy stating, how long it takes for the the mayor to step in to appoint somebody? If city council members aren't appointing applicants to commissions, how many months need to go by before the mayor steps in and takes leadership and appoints somebody to the advisory body? Thank you. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments on this item? To try and answer that question, I'll first just say that I appreciate everyone's patience with us appointing everyone. It's a difficult process to go through all the applications. We all want to make sure we're appointing good quality people. Also, sometimes they don't make it onto the agenda, so some people may be appointed, but they aren't quite on this one. I know some of my appointments were late breaking because the agenda sometimes reminds me that I need to make one. I will ask the former mayor if you happen to remember offhand what the time is until the city council can step in and appoint if they need to.
Well, I will defer to the city attorney, but I'll test my knowledge. I think the mayor could step in 45 days after the vacancy could be filled. So that would be the end of the Maddie Act notice, is my recollection from the charter. I think she's maybe looking now, but it's on that order.
It's on that order, and I'll say for reference there, I think that was a special case where a council member had said they were not going to appoint anyone no matter what. We do not have that situation that I know of we are all attempting to appoint everybody to everything. It just takes some time. Sometimes we have to recruit people, interview them, all things like that. So far we're in normal business area. City Attorney, do you have anything to add on there? Or
if I could get back to you, I thought I could find it faster than I'm able to find it. I do believe it's in the charter, but I'm not looking in the right place. So once I find it, I'll let you know.
No worries. Thank you. With that, I will look for a motion on the consent calendar.
There's also 4, 5.
I think the comments on 7, 4, and 5 were combined, if I was hearing that comment correctly, but is that, okay. Okay, now I will look for a motion.
I will move the consent calendar.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. City Clerk, can we please have the roll?
Mayor Tiedemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Hanson Romero,
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mickey.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. That brings us to our presentations. Presentation 8.1 is a presentation from Rewiring America. And may we please have the presentation? I don't know who that's from.
Evening, City Council. My name is Lizzie Karad. I'm the City's Sustainability Coordinator. I'm pleased to introduce this evening Rahul Young, Director of Local Engagement for the Local Government Leaders for Electrification, very previously known as Rewiring America. The Climate Action Committee received a presentation on local government leaders for electrification during their January Climate Action Committee meeting and recommended that the mayor and all city council members join the Mayors and Municipal Leaders for Electrification Coalition. This evening, Rahul will provide a presentation on the Local Government Leaders for Electrification organization and the work they are doing to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions and curb the climate crisis. The staff recommendation is that the council receive the presentation and that individual council members interested in joining the coalition and signing the pledge do so via the Local Government Leaders for Electrification website. Rahul?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. All right. I'm just going to share my screen. And can you see that?
We can. Thank you for being here.
Great. Thanks so much for your time. So I'm Rahul Young. I'm the Director of Local Engagement for Rewiring America. I also used to be the Green Building Coordinator for the City of Berkeley many years ago. So it's great to be reconnected with my friends in the East Bay. And thanks, Lizzie, for the introduction. I recognize that Albany is already a leader in electrification at the municipal level, so I'll keep this relatively brief. But I do just want it to be clear that from our perspective, electrification is a story of abundance and flourishing. It's a chance to be able to have the American dream, not have any real sacrifices as part of it, but have half the energy and none of the emissions. As I think many of you already know, 87% of our carbon emissions in this country come from energy in various forms. And 42% of those energy-related emissions come from decisions made around the kitchen table that we actually have real direct control over. So that includes the cars that we drive, how we heat our houses and water, how we cook our meals, how we dry our clothes, and where our electricity comes from. When you add that all up, for this country, we're talking about 1 billion machines that we need to electrify across the 121 million households in this country. Obviously, the scale of that is massive, and that is what Rewiring America was formed to try to address. As a result, we feel this massive sense of urgency to work on these, knowing that so many of these machines have 10 or 15 or 20-year timeframes of lives, so that every time that we miss a chance to have somebody change off of a fossil fuel-based machine onto an electric machine, we're losing that opportunity potentially for decades. As a result, within this decade, we must change the market default so that efficient electric machines become the most affordable, convenient, and accessible ones to install throughout the country. Fortunately, thanks to the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, known as the Climate Bill last fall, we have the ability to jumpstart the electrification movement in every community across the nation, as Albany has already begun to do. Because of the tax incentives, the tax credits and the incentives that come from the IRA, every person in this country has access to an electric wallet or an electric bank account with thousands of dollars available to them over the next few years to take advantage and to make their lives more electric. Part of what we're working on is to make sure that people across the country and in Albany know about these resources. This began for us after the passage of the IRA when we put together a calculator that's available on our website so that folks without any energy background could go there, understand what electrification can look like, understand how to take advantage of the IRA. On top of that, we have a number of different guides that are available, including our Carbon Switch website, which is kind of the wire cutter for electrification technologies to help people make the choices that'll help lead to the best electrification alternatives for their house. Over the next few months, we're going to be turning our tools into what we call a personal electrification calculator, a personal electrification planner that'll take the IRA incentives and layer on the additional incentives available at the state, municipal, utility levels. This will include the incentives that Albany has been using as well, that'll allow people to create their own custom household electrification plan, to really lay out the plan for what they want to change in their house, what the order of events is to do it, and what the costs and benefits are likely to be. So this is where it comes to you. So part of my job is to create a coalition amongst mayors and municipal leaders around the country who are devoted to electrification, to be able to show that this is really a grassroots effort that's beginning, that's encompassing communities in all parts of the country. I started this job a couple weeks ago. We now have 100. I inherited over 100 mayors and legislators and members, including Councilmember Jordan when he was mayor last year, signed on to our coalition, which I'm grateful for. This is in 26 states and growing. Over the next few months, we hope to take it to all 50 states. What we're asking mayors and municipal leaders to do is to recognize and demonstrate that they have a critical role to play in getting this information about electrification and the IRA incentives out there to their households. To really work in their communities to find every lever that they can to really make electrification transformation happen. And then really to wield the power of collective aggregate market demand and really change the game in terms of what the market looks like for heating, cooking, transportation, and really, again, make sure that we're showing that this is actually what the future looks like and this is going to bring the costs down to make this accessible to folks throughout the country. So, what I'm asking for you all to do, hopefully, is to make the pledge that former Mayor Jordan did last year as well, which includes these 4 things. So to pledge that you're going to build support for policies to help homeowners and renters at every income level and businesses of all size to electrify their homes and buildings and charge their EVs. To work to replace fossil fuel machines in municipal buildings, to reach out to businesses and support the creation of high quality jobs in the electrification space, getting away from fossil fuels, and to do what you can to use your voice in Washington, at your state, and throughout the community to educate others about electrification as a means to realize a fossil fuel-free future. We've had mayors from Berkeley, Emeryville, San Jose, and a number of other Bay Area cities join the coalition. But my hope is that coming out of this meeting, Albany can actually be the first city in the country to have the mayor and the entire city council all join our coalition and follow through on the staff recommendation and the recommendation from the CAC. Thank you so much for your time. I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time from anyone on council? Seeing none, we will open it up for public comment.
No.
None? Okay, are there any comments from City Council?
Thank you very much for being here and for the challenge. I didn't realize there were any other, there were no other councils where all the members had actually enrolled. So I may advocate for my fellow council members to do so. Does the organization also, I believe it also provides a policy clearinghouse?
Very much so. So yeah, our policy team was instrumental in some of the negotiation of the IRA last year, and as well, and is kind of involved deeply in the implementation of the IRA, along with a number of state and local policies as well. So yes, we have a number of kind of we have a long list of policy information available on the website, and certainly, you know, if there's anything that folks are looking for that they'd like access to that they're not finding there, they can certainly contact me directly as well, and I can connect you with the right person on our policy team.
I was hoping, and I have to admit I haven't looked, that some other cities would follow what Albany did in 2020 with increasing its utility user tax with a recommendation to use some of the new revenue for greenhouse pollution reduction and climate adaptation. Do you know, does the organization have a brief on that approach, which I don't know how many states allow municipalities to have a utility user tax, but certainly the 482 cities in California have that option.
I don't know off the top of my head which other cities have taken that on, and I don't believe that we have a policy brief specifically on that item, but I can certainly check with our policies team to see what the best resource is. There are certainly a couple good databases out there that I'm happy to share with Lizzie, and she can pass along, that kind of provide a list of all the electrification policies that cities across the country have adopted. A lot of those are kind of more along the lines of, you know, natural gas bans for cities that are in states that allow them to do so for new construction. But there are a few other things along the lines of what Albany has done as well. So I'm happy to pull that list as well and provide that and dig around a little bit to see if I can find the most useful policy information that might be helpful to distribute as well.
Thanks. And if there isn't a brief on that, I'd be happy to work with the organization to try to develop one in whatever format it uses. Because I don't know if it sounds like maybe you saw the staff report later, but we're having success with doing that. It appears that we've doubled our HVAC uptake rate through this program. So
Yeah, I got to see that presentation when I was at the CAC meeting, and that's really inspiring. So yes, I would love to reach out to you separately to talk through how we could write that up if we don't have a version of that already. So I'll be happy to do that offline. So I really appreciate that offer.
Great, thanks.
I'll say for my part, I've signed up in the time since you asked us to in your presentation, because I would have forgotten to otherwise, so I need to do it immediately. And I encourage everyone else on the council to do so. Any other comments?
I'll just say that I have the tab open right now to sign up, and I'll make sure I take care of that. But I also just want to state that and acknowledge that I appreciate the first point in the pledge of building support for policies for homeowners and renters at every income level. I think that's a very imperative statement and distinction to make, but also for businesses of all sizes. We could look around in our own community here in Albany, and we see we got quite a sizable number of small businesses where sometimes this idea or this notion to electrify isn't so equitable in terms of the cost and the monetary capital it takes to make those necessary transitions. So I do acknowledge, and again, I do appreciate that statement's made, because it reminds us to all hold ourselves accountable when we are making decisions on policy that do impact community members and business owners alike. So thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further comments, thank you very much for your presentation. And I believe this is informational, so we don't have to take any vote. But I encourage everybody to sign up. Thank you. That brings us to item 8.2, which is a presentation from the Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District. May we please have the presentation?
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, and I'll be brief on my presentation in the interest of time. But again, my name is Ryan Clausenser. I'm the General Manager of Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District, which should be pulling up shortly, my presentation. But it's nice for you all to have me here. It's been 4 years. I try to come to every city in the county about every 4 years in the county, this Board of Supervisors. So after this, I may not see you guys unless requested until 2027. But at least I can find some interesting information if you don't know it already. Next slide, please. So I'm going to be brief in about 10 minutes, kind of talk about why we have a mosquito abatement district. You may not even know that it exists, but we do, and we've been around for almost 100 years. How we're funded, that's always an important thing to realize. Why we care about mosquitoes and why you should care about mosquitoes, and what the future holds for this technology and these threats as well. Next slide, please. We were here once they kind of discovered that mosquitoes started spreading diseases. Once they found out malaria wasn't bad air, it was actually spread through mosquitoes. They made that connection, and it was really founded right here in Berkeley, the faculty. And there's also saltmarsh mosquitoes as well that inhabited the whole shoreline of the San Francisco Bay and the East Bay. And we were civil engineers primarily and scientists that said we need for healthy living and business in the East Bay, we need a mosquito abatement district. So we've been around since 1930. Next slide. But before there were districts, there was just community members that were needed to solve this. So they just formed little community groups. So this is one in San Rafael that was in 1902. Next slide. But they did convince the state to allow us to form a special district. So most, I'll say, mosquito districts throughout the country that are sustainable are independent special districts such as ourselves. So they formed the Mosquito Abatement Act in 1915 that allowed us to form. Next slide, please. And within that, it actually gives us power to abate. So it's not just that we can form as districts and tax, but we can actually enter property and do some civil penalties if needed. But honestly, we've looked in our records. We don't have a record of actually abating. We don't charge people $1,000 per day. We get voluntary compliance. So we do have a lot of issues in people's property, but we always look for the voluntary compliance angle. Next slide. Again, this is just some of the work that was done a long time ago, which still looks like some of the work we do today. This is on the southern part of the county with the salt marsh, and it's just allowing for the natural action of tides to bring water in or bring water out. Because again, a lot of the mosquitoes that we worry about here, that we get a lot of calls about, are all salt marsh mosquitoes. Next slide. Our board it looks like a very large board, but it's really because that's in our state law. Mosquito boards are every city that was in the district, plus the county at large. So Alameda County has a member from every city, and then the county at large, we have the agriculture commissioner. So we were very pleased to have Councilmember Lopez join us, and former trustee Jordan as well, Councilmember Jordan. But it's a mixture of council members, academics, teachers, and people that want to get more involved in their community and serve the community. So that as well. Next slide. Thank you. The board, besides hiring me, is also to set strategic plans to make sure that the funds that we are trusted with are spent accordingly, and we plan ahead and are proactive rather than reactive. Next slide. If you look on your property, if you're a property owner or a renter, you will see that this is we have the smallest little amounts on there. This is a colleague's bill in Hayward, but it's $1.74 and $2.50. So we are approved by the voters for the $2.50 for actually $5, but we always kept it half of that. We haven't raised that. The $1.74 was back after a reaction to Prop 13 in 1982. So we've kept our costs down, and we also have half of our is from ad valorem taxes. So it's a share of the assessed value of the property. So it equals to about $5 million. That's how much it costs to do mosquito control in the county. Next slide. And we are very proud that our finances are very open, transparent. It's on our website, and we are in our third year of achieving the GFOA Certificate of Excellence in Reporting. It's one of our hallmarks of our finance committee and our board, and which staff follows as well. Next slide. Okay, now moving why we control mosquitoes. Low biology, if people didn't realize, mosquitoes are aquatic insects. They're obligatory aquatic insects. They need water. But the difference is they don't absorb it through gills like some insects do. They actually have to breathe. So they have to go up to the surface and stick like a snorkel up to the air, breathe, and they go back down to feed. So it's this very unique life cycle. They spend most of it in the water. And when they do hatch, only the females bite. Males don't bite. So the females, they mate with the males, and then immediately they have to look for blood. So every time you get slapped by a mosquito, that's a female mosquito only. The males don't even have the parts to do it. So after they mate, they need to have protein to create eggs, and that's why the cycle continues, and it goes in a circle. Next slide. So again, you can always tell the difference. Males just swarm right where they're hatched. They don't leave far from home, and the females are the hunters that go out and seek blood. And that's where the disease happens, is when it bites someone that maybe has an illness, a parasite, it will then regurgitate it and spread it to individuals. Next slide. These are just some examples. You will find some of these in the Albany area, but this is where we typically find our work in the parts of the county the parts of the city you may not always see yourself. Next slide. But we are looking at new types of mosquitoes, which we'll touch on, that are found as close as Martinez, as Tracy, and in Milpitas. There's a new mosquito that's coming. It's an ancient mosquito, but it's coming to this area. So that's one area that's one I want to talk about today as well. Next slide. And those mosquitoes like containers, so they're container breeding. So you think about Culex mosquitoes. That's a genus. That is the mosquito that is native to California. They spread West Nile virus for the last 20 years, and St. Louis encephalitis, and those are the morning and night. They like birds, those mosquitoes do, so they go after birds when they roost. There's a new species of mosquito that no one ever thought was going to establish itself in California. They said it's too dry, but it's slowly marching its way through the Central Valley, and this mosquito is like the cockroach of mosquitoes. It prefers humans, it lives around humans, it's in your backyard, and that's the one that bites in the daytime generally, and it spreads diseases such as dengue, Zika, yellow fever, chikungunya. It's called Aedes aegypti, Aedes albopictus, are the two primary species of that. Next slide. So when you think about mosquito control, maybe you think way back of fogging, driving down the street and knocking down adult mosquitoes. But this right now, what I'm doing is mosquito control. I'm trying to let people know that a lot of the work is done in people's backyards. So the most simple, sustainable thing is just tip over water, especially with the rain. It's the most sustainable way to do mosquito control is just public education. And also, we treat in the water. If we do find larvae, it's looking in the water rather than flying insects. Next slide. This is our staff. We do, again, another type of mosquito control is, again, letting the tides do the work for us. So this is down in the Coyote Hills area in Newark, Fremont. We also do work in Berkeley nearby as well, and just allow the water to move. So then if the water moves, fish can get in there and do the work for us, or waves can create. It's like snorkeling in really heavy waves where you can't breathe because the snorkel, the mosquitoes are the same way. If there's too many waves, the mosquitoes can't live. Next slide, please. And we also use fish. These are not native fish, so we can't put these in natural areas anymore, but we do use them in abandoned swimming pools. We do use them in backyard ponds. This is actually the most common way we interact with the public, is providing these free mosquito fish that we grow in our facilities in Hayward. And we get several dozen calls a month to deliver these fish. And I think Albany residents, this is the most time they call us is for mosquito fish. Next slide. But we do occasionally, as I mentioned, control mosquitoes in larva sources. If it's, again, a swimming pool that we can't have fish, or there's another source, we do use a bacteria, mostly BTI, to control mosquito larvae. Next slide. And you'll see these as well. We don't helicopter very often. It's been several years since we've had to, but if we do, this is all, again, just applying a bacteria to a larger area. Next slide, please. Even by drones. We do have a few drones, some for imagery and some for applying bacteria products. And we use it in far off places where it's kind of hard to reach. You know, we would want to use a helicopter. It's more precise location. Next slide, please. Again, all the work we do is very transparent. We want everyone to know how we do it, why we do it, where we do it. So this is all the products we use throughout the county. A lot of it you can see is a lot of the red dots is storm drains. A lot of the work in mosquito control, we hire 2 or 3 employees every year, and all they do is drive around and look in storm drains for standing water that we have to treat for mosquitoes. Next slide. And occasionally, as I mentioned, we will spray for adult female mosquitoes if we catch them and they have diseases in them. We want to prevent them from biting humans and spreading diseases, so we will fog. The last time we did this was a small treatment in 2018 in Union City. We did have the first mosquito caught in the state just last week in Union City again, but it was from last year. It just was a carryover. Mosquitoes are kind of like bears. They hibernate. And we caught a mosquito, and we tested it. It had West Nile virus. But we didn't do any treatments for it because it was kind of in a far-off place, and we didn't really think that was a cost-benefit analysis and a human interaction. Again, these mosquitoes prefer birds, so it's more of a bird disease anyway. Next slide. Again, if you see the colors here, the blue is mosquito fish. So again, we are like the fish brokers for the county. We grow fish and we deliver fish. Next slide. If you ever call us, you will talk to someone, a human being at our office. A lot of times it's myself is answering those calls. And how we also look for mosquitoes is we have to trap them. So we mimic a mammal. So again, the female is looking for blood to create its eggs, and it looks for something breathing, CO2, respiration. So it goes to this, we use dry ice. So dry ice releases some CO2. The mosquito thinks it's going to get some blood. Instead, it gets trapped and tricked into falling into a net. We take this net back to our lab, and if it's a certain species, we'll actually test it for diseases. Next slide, please. And in our lab in Hayward, we do have PCR machine for testing birds and for mosquitoes. Thank you. Next slide. We also work with other county agencies right over the border in El Cerrito. We work with their agency because mosquitoes, believe it or not, don't know boundaries, so they just can fly around wherever they need to, so we have to work with our agencies. And we also do cost sharing with mutual aid agreements. Next slide. And again, besides myself speaking to you all here tonight, we also have classrooms that we teach for students, the life cycle, and we do any event. And then we're at the Solano Stroll every year as well. So it's a way, again, to work the community and let them know that this is a resource that's already been paid for on your property taxes. You don't need to hire a private company to do mosquito control. We will do it for you. Next slide. And of course, social media. Nextdoor is a very common way for you to interact with residents. Next slide. A lot of the work is on public land, but also privately owned, so it's getting that voluntary compliance. We work a lot in East Bay Regional Park District land and other cities, and the federal government as well. We have an MOU with their National Wildlife Refuge so that they allow us to do the work in a very sustainable, ecological way. Thank you. Next slide. And we want to make sure the work does well, it works actually, and we want to move the industry forward. So we are constantly partnering with through the Jan Zuckerberg's BioHub, also with University of California, Berkeley, and Davis. We often have interns looking at certain peer-reviewed journals that you'll have just a few snippets just from this last year. Next slide. The last couple of years, we've been working with Berkeley in the Goldman School of Public Policy in health equity, making sure that people know that we exist. So when we see this, it's troubling to see that we see gaps in our service area that, well, they don't know. I know I was listening to some of the comments about communication, and we take that very seriously to know that people, they should know that we exist out there, and we can take the work for them and find out these service gap areas and focus it through community workshops and through social media and other avenues to know to call us. Next slide, please. All right, last section. Thanks for being patient. I'll be done shortly, but this is the new part of mosquito control. And those mosquitoes we're concerned about that are starting to spread throughout California. They're most of Central Valley, Southern California, all the way up to Redding. And they're starting to have now, instead of travel-related cases, locally transmitted mosquito diseases in Arizona, actually. So in Florida, Texas, and Arizona, they're starting to have these tropical diseases here in America. So what we're doing is sterile insect techniques. There's some things we're looking at. Next slide, please. So these are the three that I'll just go over really briefly. Next slide. One of them is you take a bunch of mosquitoes and you grow them. From egg to adult, and then you separate them, which is not, it's as hard as it sounds to separate hundreds of thousands of mosquitoes. And then you irradiate the males. You zap the males with x-rays, and then you release them. And how it works is this works with other medflies and other pests as well, is the females mate with the males, and they think that they've been, they're going to have offspring, but they can't because the males are sterile. So eventually, with enough males crowding out the virile males, the population slowly goes down. So this has been done, it's currently being done in the Tampa region, the Fort Myers area of Florida, but also right here in Orange County. They're starting to launch this as well because they're just getting overwhelmed with this invasive mosquitoes. The public wants some action, so they're trying the irradiated male approach. Next slide. Another approach is you can infect the mosquito. Wolbachia is a bacteria that's specific only to mosquitoes, to insects. It's a very common bacteria, and they've actually found a way to commercialize this. So Google, or Alphabet really, through Verily, partnered with this Kentucky company called Mosquito Mate, and they did a EPA-sponsored permit in Fresno called Debug Fresno. And what they'll do is they release all these infected mosquitoes with this bacteria that creates sterile offspring, and eventually the population goes down. So that was just a experimental project again, but it's tried in a few places in the country as well. But this is another option that districts are looking at as well, but there's some regulatory hurdles to get that through. Next slide. And the last one is genetically modifying the mosquito. This has been done in the Florida Keys. It took a while to do it, but they finally had an experimental permit, and they're trying to do it in Visalia as well. And this one, you're actually modifying the genes of a mosquito to create sterile offspring. And what it releases, you put this girl's holding this box, has eggs, you add water to it, and only males release, and it has a self-limiting gene that passes on to offspring. So eventually, after I think 10 generations, the population goes down. So this is something that, again, they're trying to do in Visalia as a project. We don't have the mosquito in our county yet, in Albany, but it's something we're always looking at. Again, our science is looking at it to see what is a good option years down the way, the round, hopefully. So, but there are three things that you'll probably hear a lot in the news about. Is they're actually using some of these in Hawaii right now. There's an endangered bird that's being really decimated in the uplands of Hawaii because of mosquito, and they're actually using genetically modified mosquitoes and Wolbachia to lower the population so these birds can survive as an endangered species. So I went a little bit more than 10 minutes, I apologize. But I get excited about this stuff. But thank you if you have any questions. I'm always here in our email. Our website's mosquitoes.org, which is easy to remember, and mine is ryan@mosquitoes.org. So if you have any questions, but I really thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council?
Yes, I had a couple quick questions. So when you had mentioned on your slide deck on slide 19 about access to mosquito fish and them being provided for free, are there any prerequisites or requirements for folks who are requesting that?
No, we will bring them to you. I mean, people can drive all the way down to Hayward, but I mean, we would rather bring it there. So we know that the water is a suitable location. So we make sure that we kind of go through if people don't have a fish tank, they maybe don't know how to keep fish alive. But some fish, once they have it in a pond, they can last there for decades. So, but that's it. They just call us up. We'll kind of walk through and, okay, what's the size of the pond? What's the water look like? And that's actually one of the best ways to control mosquitoes is in a pond or a water fountain or all these things. So, yeah, so they just need to call us up and we'll do the rest.
Okay, and then my second question, and every council member has a dirty little secret. Mine is I'm an undercover fish nerd. One of my research projects, actually for my dissertation at UC Berkeley, is looking at survival and migration of coho salmon and understanding what happens when dissolved oxygen levels reach fatal levels for cohos, that being like 5 milligrams per liter. I seen on your slide you had mentioned that the mosquito fish can survive at very low oxygen levels. I'm curious if you know general range of what that survival.
I wish I knew that off the top of my head. I don't have that information, but I will for sure to get that to you, what the oxygen level is. But yeah, they're not quite like a carp or like that level,
Yeah.
goldfish, if you will, but they don't need much. So, but we do, again, swimming pool is an example. Even like I said, a backyard pond is more than enough. But I'll get that information to you in the next day or two.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
You would think I would know the answer to this, having served on the body for 2 years, but Councilmember Hanson Romero kindly sent me some photos of some standing water on wine barrels on Solano Avenue, and I've been remiss on taking action. I apologize. Is there a email address, or is there some other way that people report to the district? Is that appropriate? Does the district take reports like that and then go out and speak to the owner of said object?
Yeah, they can call us or they can go to mosquitoes.org and there's a big button, submit a service request. And people do it all the time. They take a picture of, especially now, standing water, wine barrels, as you mentioned, and we'll be out there the next day. A gentleman named Neil Campbell, a nice Irish fellow, will drive up here. and yeah, we take those calls all the time. And we look for a long-term solution to certain things. So, but you can always email me, Ryan at Mosquitoes, or ACMAD at Mosquitoes, which is our acronym, or you can just go to the website and you'll find it as well. Either way.
Great, thanks. Now I know what to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Then we will go to public comment.
We have none.
None? Any comments from council?
Yeah, I will comment. I'm just astounded at the cost benefit of the organization. I mean, $5 million to improve our quality of life the way it does. I was just amazed that the budget wasn't larger, as you saw from the property taxes. And so I know there was some controversy over the district annexing Albany, and I just want to thank the district for persisting in annexing Albany. I'm glad that Albany is a part of the district, and particularly given the 80s aegypti headed our way. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
I'll echo that. You make a mean presentation about how beneficial this was, and I was especially glad to see some fellow MPPs and some of my classmates represented who did their projects with you. So,
oh, you knew the Sky or Emily?
Yes, I was in class with Sky.
Oh, she presented sorry to interrupt, she presented last week at our annual conference. Sky did, and she had a really good response to her work. So,
fantastic. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman.
I'll actually raise one comment. Thinking about the wine barrels and other possible small bodies of standing water, it occurred to me that Albany has on a major remodel has a requirement for drains to be installed under the sidewalk with a junction box that I believe receives rainwater from the roof. And I know the ones I've looked in, sometimes the outlet of that box is not right down at the floor, and so they have standing water in them. So I would encourage staff to look at those requirements and how those are constructed, and if they're required to be constructed so that they completely drain. Thanks.
I believe that brings us to unfinished business. We'll start with item 10.1, which is considering additional funding for a heat pump rebate program. Will you please have staff's recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me share my PowerPoint. Hello, City Council members. I think I'm new to some of you. My name is Michelle Plaus. I'm the Community Development Analyst, and I've been running our Heat Pump Rebate Program, which I'm here to talk to you about tonight. So I'll start off with just a summary of what the program is. So this program was created by council in March of last year and allocated $40,000. And it's a program to provide rebates for heat pump, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems to Albany residents. These systems are essentially a replacement for a standard furnace. They're all electric, they're incredibly efficient, and they take us a long way towards meeting our climate goals, in particular in our Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, and electrifying the city, as we spoke about a little earlier tonight. So this program offers rebates in the amounts listed to the right over here: $750 for ductless heat pumps, $1,500 for ducted heat pumps, $1,000 for electrical panel upgrades with a heat pump, and then all of those amounts are doubled for low-income households. And then finally, there's a $500 signing bonus for contractors who register with the BayREN program. This is a regional program that offers a variety of rebates for home energy efficiency and electrification, and contractors have to register with the program to get access to those rebates. So those are the rebates. This program, it launched on June 1st, and our eligibility requirements are pretty broad. Any building in Albany is eligible, and we offer one rebate per housing unit. Any contractor can be used as long as they're, of course, licensed. And the only other requirement is that the homeowner receive a building permit filed on or after June 1st. So those are the basics of the program. The application process is pretty simple. The first thing they have to do is receive a building permit, and then at that point, the homeowner or the contractor can fill out a short online application, which you see on the right here. And then at that point, I'll confirm their eligibility and the amount that their rebate, the amount of rebate they're eligible for. And I reserve that rebate for them for 3 months, which can be extended if necessary. At that point, they'll complete the project, they'll pass their building inspection as any other project would, and then send the inspection record to me proving that they passed the building inspection, and then I work with the finance department to mail the rebate check directly to the homeowner. So it's pretty simple. It's been going smoothly so far. And I'll talk a little bit now about the impact of the program and how it's been going. So there are 23 rebates so far that have been either reserved or paid, as you can see in this chart on the left here. So about 40% have been paid so far, about 50% reserved, and we have 5% remaining. That's $2,000. So we're very, very close to out of the $40,000 allocated originally. The average rebate amount was $1,600. So, you know, most people are getting ducted heat pumps, and a few people are getting electrical panel upgrades as well, and, you know, a mix of things. And there's a pretty big range as well. So the smallest rebate is that $750 for the ductless heat pump, and the largest rebate we've given is the maximum amount, $5,000, which was a low-income household that got a ducted heat pump and an electrical panel upgrade. Goes. In terms of the overall impact of the program, it's a little bit harder to determine, but I've tried to gather as much data as I could. So in terms of outreach, I've actually been really pleased with how successful the outreach on this program has been. I have received a lot of inquiries about it and talked to a lot of residents about the program. And we also partnered with BayREN in the summer to send out mailers to all homeowners, telling them about the program, and a webinar that I held with Bayren to talk about heat pumps in general and the Albany Rebate and the Bayren programs. And we received 160 signups and 80 participants in the webinar. That led to a lot of great questions. We actually went over time trying to answer all of the many great questions we had, and over 50 conversations with residents, many of whom were messaging me after the webinar, asking more follow-up questions, really interested in heat pumps and the program. And I've also talked with one of our major contractors who does HVACs in the city, and they told me that they're actually using this program as a tool for outreach and trying to spread the word about heat pumps and get more clients to go for a heat pump. So it's definitely being used as a sales tool as well. We do ask in our in the application form this question here, along with a few other questions. Would you have installed a heat pump without this program? And as you can see, there's a bit of a range. Most people are falling within the probably or maybe category. So as you can see, we're not getting a ton of people who absolutely wouldn't have gone for a heat pump without this program, but most people are sort of on the fence, at least as they're self-reporting. In terms of the more numerical data, as you can see on the right here, this shows heat pumps as a percentage of our HVAC permits over the last several years, starting in 2018. I've split these into 6 months portions just to make it a little bit easier to see the changes. And as you can see, starting from the end of 2020, there's been a really rapid increase in the popularity of heat pumps, and in the last 6 months, we've actually reached over 50%, which is pretty incredible. And as you can see, it's been a very steep and somewhat consistent trajectory. But if we kind of zone in a little bit closer on a month-to-month level, it's a little easier to see what the impact of the program might be. So this is that same heat pumps as a percentage of HVAC permits. This is a 3-month rolling average, just to try to make the data a little more consistent since we have such small numbers. But what you can see here is we have an increase happening starting in January of 2021. And then there's this kind of really big sweep upwards right at the beginning of the TECH program, which I've pointed out there. The TECH program was a state-run program offering $3,000 rebates for heat pumps. It started around December of 2021. And you can see that there was a lot more popularity for heat pumps in the beginning of 2022. And then in May, the TECH program kind of very quickly ran out of money. And so a lot of people just ran to get their heat pumps as quickly as they could. You see a huge spike in April and May, and then it drops off. And it's just about that time that the Albany Rebate Program started. Of course, we can't know for certain what would have happened, but it seems possible that it might have flatlined or grown more slowly at that point without that TECH rebate. But as you can see here, since it went back to its more normal level after the end of the TECH program, we do see the percent of heat pumps rising by almost 10% over the time that the program has been in place. So with all of that said, it does seem like the program is having an impact for those people on the fence. It's not making this huge difference for people who are really into furnaces or where they don't necessarily have a ton of money to spend on their HVACs, but it is having an impact on those sort of in-between people. In terms of costs, just to give you a better sense of the numbers here, generally speaking, heat pumps cost about $7,000 more than a gas furnace. This is all on averages. There's a huge range, but that's generally about how much it is. In general, also, these rebates were covering about 10% of the total project cost. So again, sort of in that on-the-fence range where it's making a difference to some people, but not everyone. Kind of high enough to be noticeable that it means something to them and it's making an impact, but still low enough that the funding is able to cover a fairly large number of projects. So also to give you a sense of the other programs that exist, there's the Bayren program, which I mentioned. This is offering a $1,000 rebate for heat pump HVAC systems. There is the caveat that ductless HVAC systems can almost always get this rebate, but ducted systems have to have an existing AC system for them to be eligible. So a lot of ducted systems in Albany cannot get the Bay Rent rebate. There's also a new federal tax credit from the Inflation Reduction Act that offers up to $2,000 tax credits for heat pump installations. And then the tech program is expected to start back up in March. The amounts are still to be determined, so we don't have a ton of information, but I'm expecting it to be somewhat similar to the previous $3,000 range. It's just my guess, though. And then finally, there's the HERA program. This is another one from the Inflation Reduction Act. And this is going to be offering up to $8,000 for heat pump HVAC systems. However, it'll still be a while before it launches. I'm guessing probably sometime in 2024. All right, so all that said, to the specifics of staff's recommendation for this program, we don't recommend changing the rebate amounts. They seem to be providing an incentive, and especially with the increasing funding from other sources, we think it'll continue to push those people on the fence, and the number of people who are on the fence is going to continue to grow as these other rebates come into force. We also think the difference between the ductless and ducted rebates makes sense, since the ductless heat pumps are slightly less expensive, and also because they have funding available from Bay Rent that many ducted systems don't. We do recommend a slight change to that contractor signing bonus that I mentioned, increasing the amount from $500 to $750, and also making tech registrations eligible for that signing bonus. At the moment, it's just for the Bay Rent program, but as tech starts to come back, we'd like to make it make contractors eligible for the bonus if they sign up for tech as well. So that would only work. They'd get one signing bonus for signing up for one or the other. You wouldn't be able to get both as a single contractor. The reason we'd like to increase the amount is because there hasn't been a ton of interest in this so far, so we think maybe it's not quite enough to make up for the time it takes to register. And we're also, of course, hoping to add in tech because we want to boost access to the tech program. And then finally, with the additional funding, we're recommending funding it with $65,000. We believe that will last until the end of the fiscal year, and that it allows room for heat pump installations to continue growing at the rate we're hoping to see them grow, and allow that funding to be there with that extra room added in. And then there's no appropriation necessary for that funding level, as it does exist in the current community development budget from some savings from other sources. And that's all summarized in the staff recommendation below there. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions from council?
Michelle, could you go into a little more detail on the breakup between, you mentioned there was one particular applicant who was low income who got a full $5,000. Was that the only applicant of the 23, or were there more? I'm trying to get a sense of how many people took advantage of it that were taking advantage of the low income side of the.
Yeah, the $5,000 amount was the only low income applicant, and they happened to get the highest possible amount.
I guess I had just another quick question. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a jump to try to, get the contractors. I don't think increasing it by just the $750. I think maybe it's just part of it might be more of the communication piece still with them. I don't think that they're really focused on too much of this yet, so possibly some more advertising. And just gonna say, as someone whose floor furnace caught on fire, I think heat pumps are a good thing, so. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, when was that?
Christmas Eve last year.
Wow. That's Well, I'm glad you're with us. Let's see. Are commercial properties eligible?
Yes, we haven't had any applications from commercial properties, but they are eligible.
And then you indicated there's savings within the Community Development Department budget that could, I don't know what the proper term is. I don't know if we're allocating. It sounds like we're not allocating. I don't know what it is we're being asked to do, but authorizing maybe?
Yeah, I think the term we used was to amend the program to increase the budget, and then that increase would be taken from, it's from savings in the professional services line item that weren't used in the community development budget.
Okay. I know this is a bucket matter, but I would be interested if the council does go that direction to attribute it to the Measure DD revenue specifically, which I guess that will come in some future point, but if it gets rescheduled to that, just to keep track of it so that we show faith with the voters.
Seeing no further questions from council, we will go to public comment.
If you might grab my hand.
1 second, Grandpa. Hey, it's Jeremiah here. I just want to ask, about the funding. Is this something that's going to be coming from the general fund? Again, sugar sweetened beverage taxes is going to be going toward this. I think it's great. Adding more budget for the heat pumps. I know, going electric is a green opportunity. I just am concerned about the funding. We keep dipping into the same funds over and over. Sugar sweetened beverage tax is a general fund, and it's kind of limited regarding the taxes we get every year. So, just keep in mind, what we have left in the sugar sweetened beverage tax and the general fund, and just keep in mind we got a whole year worth of events and things happening. So just, consider what the budget is and how much money we keep spending and how much money we keep depleting our general fund and our sugar sweetened beverages taxes. I don't know eventually if we can create a tax for, electronic additions to homes, something 0.1% tax, on our local stores, something that could go towards a specific fund for electronic, additions. I know in the next 10 years, we're going to keep having more and more electronic programs and more solar panels and heat pumps and appliances and refrigerators and stoves and, everything electric. And we're going to keep taking from the same fund. So we got to find a solution, think long-term, right? 5-year, 10-year plan on where we're going to keep getting this money from. And we're going to be specifically using it for electronics. It would be nice to make a specific fund with some direction on, electronics and home things. Also, I would just recommend, looking more for state grants and federal grants on these things and kind of stay up on that. But just keep in mind, the general fund is only limited, and we got to keep in mind what we're using it for. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And that's it. I'll say in response to that question, this is, I don't believe, projected to come from the sugar sweetened beverage tax, but from Measure DD, whose purpose from the staff report is to fund climate action projects. Correct? Any council discussion?
Well, I asked staff how much revenue was generated by Measure DD through the end of last fiscal year, and what 1/3 of that was. And if I had the numbers correct, it was $204,000 so far. So to the extent that the table at the end of the staff report indicates 120,000 of climate projects, that would indicate there is room for this within that, and that's not accounting for the revenue that's come in this year. I'm interested in talking about maybe changing the amounts a bit. Former Councilmember Barnes sent us a letter, which I thought made some good points about the risk of moving wealth up rather than down, and particularly with the $2,000 tax credit that's come into effect, as I understand it, which would certainly benefit wealthier households. Just to put a thought on the table was to keep the $3,000 for low income, which is below 80% of area median income, if I recall, and then create a $2,000 subsidy for moderate income, which is 80 to 120% of area median income. And to be clear, that area median is for the county, not specific to the city of Albany, and then reduce it for households that are above 120% of AMI to $1,000, and then do something similar with ductless. But I'll stop there to see if there's appetite for making those adjustments, and also get staff's reaction to that possibility. I know introducing changes at this point could be confusing to marketing it, but we are just, this is the first 6 months, so I don't want to just feel like we're anchored to what we tried out at the very first time.
Yeah, I can offer a general response. I think it would, of course, complicate the program a little bit in terms of, having more text when we're sort of explaining what the program is. And the application process would then involve kind of confirming people's incomes, which we've done one example of, and it was pretty smooth, but it does add, a couple of extra steps. That said, I don't think it would be a huge deal. It wouldn't add a massive amount more work onto the program. So I think it's definitely doable if the council would like that. It would just be moving it away from keeping it really simple and streamlined, which was sort of the initial way that we designed it. But of course, whatever council would like to do, it's definitely doable.
I have a question for staff. Councilmember Preston Jordan offered kind of an AMI breakdown. Are there any discounts when getting permits or doing any other applications that involve AMI? And if there are, does 80 to 120 match those?
As far as I'm aware, there is a discount on property tax related to income, and I think it's also the 80%.
Jump in here.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's actually, so that's very low income, so that's 50%. So we've been adding that to more and more of our property taxes as they come up for renewal or initiation.
Yeah, so I appreciate, Michelle, your comment about trying to keep things simple. I am all for keeping things simple. I do think that this is something that is beneficial to the community. And that's my leading question about other places where we give discounts, because I don't want staff to have to track, oh, this person's at 90% AMI, so they get this discount, but they don't get this discount. And so I know as things build up, that gets complicated. So I'd like to keep it easier on staff side. But I am supportive of this idea about having another threshold level for really encouraging. I think there's an education and getting the information out there, but then also just making this more equitable. So.
I was just looking up to try to see if I could see what other cities' charts were and stuff, but maybe I'm not that quick. So, I'm guessing that probably some research has been done to, based upon what our rebates are versus other cities. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I did see some research a while back when we started the program. There are not very many programs like this. I think there's 4 or 5 in the state. So there aren't a whole lot of data points, but I did do some research and spoke to some of the folks at those cities. And these amounts are generally within the scope of what's normal. The 1,500 for the ducted systems is slightly on the higher side. Most of them are around 1,000 or 1,250, but yeah, it's roughly in the scope of things. And then, of course, inflation since then, so.
And it seems from your data chart that most of the people that, like the rebate didn't really affect them so much from doing it. You said it was kind of like a teetering effect. It kind of tipped some of them over the edge, but I'm guessing maybe those are some of the higher income level households that were planning on doing this work anyway. So I think your suggestion as far as doing something more in an equitable basis for a lower income range might be something we should look into.
Yeah, I think, at least based on what I could tell, there's a lot of people that they were sort of thinking they might do a heat pump, and they might have done it without this program, but this really helped them get there. But yeah, it's 10% of their total cost, so it's not taking them from 0 to 100, of course. So yeah, it's probably generally higher income households, although not exclusively. Yeah. I hope I answered all the questions. Okay.
I'll just jump in. I know it sounds like, just a bit repetitive, but I'm one to always look at things from an equity lens, and so I'm not going to go, beat the same conversation. Concerns or questions around how this looks like it tends to benefit certain groups of folks. But what I will highlight and acknowledge is I'm looking at the staff report, and I see other current projects being funded with an EV charging pilot as well. And again, that's something that, someone's ability to afford EV vehicles isn't quite the same if they are in low income status compared to someone higher income. So my concern is I'm looking at what's currently being funded and what's currently being offered to community members, and it looks like there's this little hint of inequities around who gets to be able to benefit from these funds, but also who gets to be able to feel like they are taking charge for or get to have the agency to help us address the climate crisis. So I'm not going to sit here. What I'm getting to is I'm not going to sit here and try to advocate or say we need to push back on this heavy, but what I do want to push for is for City Council and for Climate Action Committee and for city staff to charge all of us to hold ourselves to account and come up with creative solutions and creative ideas that can allow folks from all different income brackets and across the whole spectrum on ways that they could benefit from Measure DD funds. So that they could also feel like they are actively participating, being able to take advantage of such opportunities to help address the climate crisis. I'll leave my comment at that. Probably make for more fruitful conversations with city staff in the future.
Because the staff report didn't discuss the EV pilot project other than that line, and it was put in place before your service, I don't know if you know what its goal is or who's eligible for it. Have you talked to staff about that, or I don't want to tell you things you already heard?
No, not yet. I just have a very brief overview.
Okay, so as I understand it, its goal is to subsidize the installation of EV chargers in multi-residence buildings only, and it's a pilot. But so, in that sense, I mean, there obviously is an exact nexus between people who rent an apartment and income, but there's some weak correlation. So in that regard, it's not targeted at providing subsidies for chargers for people who live in single detached residences. So for whatever that's worth. In terms of equity, as soon as I came into office, I started working on and with staff, and eventually staff rightly said, okay, you got to get council direction so we can keep working on this, which the council provided, was to work on rational gas distribution network, retreat. And so that's really what I'm most interested in using these funds for. And that the charge and stop waste staff was enthusiastic, and they do contract work with Bay Rent on multi-residence buildings, was to figure out locations in the gas distribution network that coincide with naturally occurring affordable housing in Albany, and then approach those building owners to see if we could subsidize them to the point where they would electrify the whole building, which would then also allow cutting off that end of the gas line. So it'd have a double benefit. We were fortunate to be at a moment in time when stop waste staff brought PG&E into the conversation. PG&E was also very interested in this. They had just built a beta test mapping interface to work with staff of jurisdictions to figure out where these locations are. And staff has done that work now and identified 13 clusters of buildings in Albany. So that's going forward. So that's my hope for moving wealth down, is to electrify those older 1960s multi-residence buildings. So hopefully we'll develop that further and bring it to the council. But that's just one idea.
For my part, I'll say, Councilmember Lopez, I appreciate your comment on this. It's one of the things I think about for these sorts of programs where, we are incentivizing beneficial behavior that is broadly beneficial for the city for our climate goals, but it's very hard to make it fully equitable just by the very nature of the program, because we're never really going to cover the full cost of this thing. We're just going to incentivize people who might have the ability to do it anyway. So it is, it is something we have to think about, and it's very difficult to design that in the, the right way. With that, I think, Councilmember Jordan, your suggestion of upping or having a mid-tier for moderate, and keeping this double incentive for those who are low income might help us move that needle a little bit, and hopefully, other programs will step in and keep that momentum of equity-focused environmental development going.
This sounds like an invitation to a motion.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I will move the authorization of an addition of $65,000 to the HPHVAC, Albany's HPHVAC subsidy program, with the establishment or adjustment, depending on how you look at it, to the subsidy to $1,000 for ducted for households that are over 120% area median income, and $500 for ductless, and the subsidy for ducted for moderate income households to be $2,000, and the subsidy for low income households to be $3,000. And sorry, on the ductless side, the subsidy for moderate would be $1,000, and for other households above 120% would be $1,500. Sorry, two scales, I'll repeat those. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 for households above moderate, and low income on the ducted, and for the ductless would be 500, 1,000, 1,500. And also approving the increase of the contractor, I guess you say reward for enrolling from 500 to 750, and expanding eligibility to enrollment in tech. Did I get it all?
I'll second that.
Okay.
I have one question very quickly. Do you have any edits to the electrical panel bonus, which is currently set at $1,000 or $2,000 for low income?
I would entertain your opinion on that. Yeah. I guess it would make sense to change that in parallel. I'm trying to think of numbers that might make sense off the top of my head. I guess I don't want to reduce it for low income.
Can I recommend?
Sure.
500, 1,000, and 2,000?
Great, thank you. Amendment accepted.
I believe we have a motion and a second. Can we please have the roll?
Sorry, was it Councilmember?
I second.
Vice Mayor Mickey,
Yes.
Mayor Tiedemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Hanson Romero,
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan,
Yes.
and Councilmember Lopez.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent.
If I could comment, when I was campaigning for Measure K last, I guess October, September, I probably knocked on about 200 doors and spoke to people, and some of them were engaged with this program and they spoke very highly of you. So I just wanted to pass that along. That's kind of rare, completely objective feedback to get from somebody unbidden. So thank you for your work for the city. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe if staff has everything they need from us, that brings us to item 10-2, which is a consideration of recommendations on youth and youth-related city advisory body seats. And can we please have the presentation from our ad hoc committee?
Should I go ahead? Okay. Okay. Well, you can say there were sort of three groupings of recommendations. And so there's a grouping of recommendations about having the first seat of the seats that are currently nominated to be filled by the Board of Education have a qualification that it be a student who would occupy that seat, and not necessarily a student of Albany Unified School District, but a student of any Albany school. And I'm not sure I put this in the report, but I think the intent was whether or not they are resident of Albany themselves, because I think there's important perspectives to be gained from people who don't live in Albany but come to Albany regularly. And the second grouping was if for those bodies that have a second seat, it would be an adult who is engaged with youth in the city in one way or another. Obviously, it could be a parent or a guardian or staff of a school. Again, not just a USD or a coach of a non-school sports league, for instance. And then the last set of recommendations was that this would be essentially a partnership between the board or between the district and the city, between the board and the council to recruit for these positions. That particularly came up because I had not been aware that the board had so many committees. I mean, they almost have, or actually do, maybe even have more committees than we have advisory bodies now. Now their structure is different. Two of the trustees sit on each of those committees, but they also have members from the community that they recruit. So they've got a lot of recruiting to do, just as we do, and as we heard in public comment, trying to fill those vacancies, and they have quite a few vacancies. So it seemed like there would probably be benefit to us joining together in recruiting for these positions. And so that the suggestion was, one, to make decisions on those recommendations, so those recommendations that we want to pursue as a body, and two was authorization for the ad hoc committee or any member to actually go to the school board meeting, which I believe is a week from tomorrow, and present these ideas to the board and get the board's feedback.
Anything to add?
No, I think that was.
Any questions from the rest of the council? With that, we'll go to public comment and then come back for discussion.
Hi, this is Margie Marks again. I just wanted to say, I feel like this whole exercise is like micromanaging something that doesn't need to be micromanaged. The council already voted that the appointments from the school board would be a student, a parent, or a teacher, or whatever language Preston was using. So that's been voted on. But now you want to micromanage it more. I mean, like at the last meeting when you were talking about, well, we need a student will be on it for 2 years and one will be on it for 1 year. I've been on commissions with the students. You know, you don't know what the students are going to want to do or do. Just get people that really want to be on the commission and appoint them. It doesn't matter if they're a senior or a junior or any of that kind of thing, but leave it up to the school board. You already said it has to be one of these three people. Why can't you leave this up to the school board? I don't understand why the council feels like they need to micromanage an appointment from the school board for the SEJC when they've already put parameters in place for that appointment. Oh, the parameters were that the council can approve or disapprove the appointment. So that's there. So I think you should just let the school board do it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hey, Jeremiah Garapinguelo here. Yeah, I agree 100% with Margie. You know, micromanaging and dictating what the school district does and how they choose people. You know, it's like, what if the school district started making policies on how city council were to make decisions? You know, how would you like that? How would that make you feel? Right? The school district's their own entity. They should be able to pick whoever they feel would represent the school district best. The school districts should be able to make up their own mind on appointing whoever they wish to, and not have to be susceptible to city council trying to dictate how they should make their own decisions. I mean, the city council won't even put the school district's meetings up on the city's website to let the public know there's meetings. You know, I don't see much cooperation with the City of Albany helping out the school district with too much, other than telling them how they should run things. You know, it kind of seems like City Council is kind of being a little controlling, you know, displaying a little controlling behavior on trying to dictate how an entire district is supposed to make decisions. I mean, I'm sure they can make decisions for themselves. You know, I think that the school district should be able to appoint whoever they choose, whoever they think would be good commissioners or committee members. And for city council to make a stern policy to where one has to be a student. It just has to be. And we recommend it be a junior. You know, that's pretty strict. What if that's not what they want? I mean, sure, they may want it, which is great, and they may like your idea, but no way should the school district have to be forced by city council to do something. That is just outrageous. You know, how would city council like to be forced to do something by the school district? You know, you got to treat others how you want to be treated, right? So here city council wants to make a policy to control the school district. I mean, I don't see the school district trying to make policies to control city council's decisions. Not at all. This is something city council's ideas. I believe this was Preston Jordan's idea, if I'm not mistaken. You know, the school district should be able to have their own ideas on who they want to represent them. I agree with Margie.
Thank you for your comment.
That's all.
That's all. We'll bring it back for council discussion.
Yeah, I'll note that the city council has no authority to appoint members of committees to the Board of Education. So in that sense, it is asymmetric, and we welcome the Board of Education having input into who serves on the advisory body to the city council. But that is something that the city is providing to the board and the district that is not going the other way. So I hope that people would see that we're actually inviting the school district into having representatives that advise this body on how it proceeds. With regard to the council already having voted that the first seat should be reserved for a student, and the second seat should be occupied by an adult who is engaged with youth. I may be mistaken, and hopefully staff will correct me if I'm not, or the mayor, since he was on the last council, but I don't think that the council took that vote previously. The council did vote that the board would nominate and the council would approve, but not in terms of who would occupy those seats. And so I think the idea that this council embodied the ad hoc committee for was specifically to get that youth-focused perspective onto these bodies. And I will note that the Climate Action Committee, since I believe, well, I don't know, maybe not since its origination, but for many sessions, biannual sessions so far, the one seat that was appointed by the Board of Education was required to be occupied by a student, and that's been very successful, I would say. So there is that precedent there. So we're just seeking to build on that prior precedent.
And just wanted to add that, looking at the options of opening it up to all the youth in Albany, not just the school board, but to, reach out to other schools, whether it be, Tilden Prep, or so it gives more of an equitable balance to all of our youth and maybe homeschool as well. It's not just to limit that, so.
I would just share too, like, I can understand, I could entirely see why it'd be perceived as micromanaging, but reading the memo report, I should say, to actually look into conversations of including folks who don't live in Albany proper, which wasn't, to my knowledge, something that was permitted beforehand, which I think could be potentially game-changing if we have youth who live outside of Albany but attend here, and we have a considerable number of youth and parents in that situation. I have a lot of friends in that situation who previously lived in the UC Village but couldn't find housing here, but they live in another city nearby, and they're able to still have their students in this district. So having these conversations with the district, with the school board, potentially allows those folks to now have a seat at the decision-making table. Well, I just want to, bring that up and make sure to note that that's how I took it when I read the memo, that this is actually the potentiality for a conversation to expand what we can have in terms of representation. We talk about the need for diversity, we talk about the need for representation, and this is an opportunity to potentially bring it into the fold for those folks who aren't able to afford to live in Albany proper, or represent very different demographics and socioeconomic statuses. I just want to throw that out there. I can understand, that valid sentiment about it feeling like there's microaggression happening, or not microaggression, micromanagement. But I'm all game for this potential conversation with the school board and how we can really get more faces and more representation, particularly from students and parents, or not just parents, but adults who are involved in any capacity with youth, which I think was a very solid piece to include in the memo, and I appreciate that. I'll leave it there.
I think I would, I appreciate the public comment, and I think the way that I look at it is we have consistently heard both tonight and I would say on the campaign trail that the city and AUSD need to do a better job of communicating. And I think what I see in this effort is actually opening that conversation. In terms of the micromanaging side, I would say, I don't know that we need to be so specific that it has to be a senior and that it has to be a rising junior in the ex officio situation. I think, that is for the AUSD to figure out who is the best candidate and who would be a good backup or future candidate. But in terms of micromanagement of AUSD, I feel like actually it's opening up the conversation. Was eye-opening to me also to hear that they have committees and commissions where they don't have enough members. And so that raises a question to me, and this was a comment that was made earlier tonight, was, well, for those people who applied to be a city commissioner or committee member, if they're not chosen to be on climate action or another committee, there's a possibility for us to work with the school district and say, hey, there are these candidates who are interested in serving the community. There wasn't a spot on a city commissioner council, but committee or commission, but perhaps there is one on AUSD's commission and commission. So, we are a small community. We are a community with people whose days are very busy. And so anyone who's willing to volunteer or asked to be nominated, really, it's a resource for both organizations to be working from. So I actually think this is a great opportunity to continue building more bridges with AUSD.
I would agree with everything that's been said previously. This has been, a good faith effort of us to reach out and establish more means for people really involved in the school district to be involved in the city's decision-making process, and that's what we're trying to guarantee. And I'll also say for clarity, I think you touched on this in your explanation, Councilmember Jordan, but part of the purpose with what's on the agenda with this recommendation, specifically authorizing a council member or the committee to discuss this with the school board, that specifically means they would be able to go to the school board meeting next and say, I'm speaking with the voice of the council instead of just I'm here as, ex-council member talking about what I think you should do, which is a, important procedural step that we should go through that allows that conversation to really happen on a sort of more official, weighty basis. So I think we should definitely move forward and do that.
Thanks for opening up to people who come to Albany regularly but don't live in Albany. I think that follows on was the Economic Development Committee that previously provided for that with its appointees from the Solano Avenue Association. Yeah, so there is some precedent for that and for that working out. And in terms of opening up to students beyond and adults who are beyond AUSD, I think it was said last time by Councilmember Hanson Romero, but I really want to credit her for that thought. And if there is to be authorization to go to the board, I wonder, since there's somewhat of a perception that this is associated with me, it would be better if somebody else did that, just to show that, no, this is the council, the council talking, the will of the council wanting to have this conversation. So put that out there.
I could go, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I thought you had a conflict that night. I can't remember.
Right.
It's Tuesday. It's next Tuesday. Sorry, because you would be the obvious choice otherwise.
Thank you.
I may have glitched. I'm temporarily challenged.
I can't remember when the date was, or what the time was.
So I would offer that should Councilmember Hanson Romero not be able to go on the 14th, that we appoint an alternate. And that way we don't need to
figure it out. Okay. Thanks.
A lot of things could happen that could make it that you can't attend. So.
Can I clarify, if that alternate does go, does the alternate then report back to the full council? Because we can't have the alternate report back to the subcommittee.
I would recommend that whoever goes reports back to the entire committee anyway. It's the entire council anyways.
Perfect.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Do I need to make a motion?
If you have one to make, please do.
I make a motion that we approve that either myself or another council person go and meet with AUSD to further the conversations regarding these appointments.
Are there any volunteers to be the alternate?
I will volunteer to be an alternate, but I'm looking at another council member to see if they want to volunteer first.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Either?
Yes, I'll be happy to. And there's a dovetail here that I was going to mention in future agenda items, but because it's come up a couple times, I will talk very briefly about our plans for communication with the school board and 2x2 and all that stuff. So it makes sense that I could do it if necessary, seeing as mayor, I have to lead that. So I guess what I'll technically do is second that motion and offer a friendly amendment that the alternate is me.
Perfect. Okay, so we have a,
All right.
I believe we have a motion and a second. Can we please call the roll?
Councilmember Hanson Romero,
yes.
Councilmember Jordan,
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mickey,
Yes.
and Mayor Tiedemann.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I believe that brings us to item 11.1, our new business, our request for financial contribution to the upcoming Solano Avenue Association events. And I thank our patient audience for sticking around for everything leading up to this. Though, I will say we have started this sort of item later in previous councils, so we're doing okay. Can we please have the staff report?
Thank you, Mayor. This provides a request to the council from the Solano Avenue Association regarding sponsorship of upcoming events to celebrate and recognize our business community and community at large. As expressed in the staff report, the total request is $35,000, which would fund a contribution to the Solano Avenue Association Stroll, 2023 Solano Stroll, as well as 4 strollish events throughout the year. The Solano Stroll requires an encroachment permit because the street is closed, so that would be incorporated into a resolution pending council direction. Also, council should give staff direction on any other conditions that you may want to see as you get to that point of your discussion in terms of the bike parking and other services to be provided. We also walk through some financial considerations in your staff report. There are likely other options that you could concoct out of these examples, but primarily the options are a straightforward allocation from the general fund, recognizing that we are operating in a deficit and have been for some period of time. Also, for an interim solution, at least for this conversation currently, the council would have the ability to use the Rescue Act funds. As noted in your staff report, you have allocated a portion of those to business resiliency and recovery. And in your previous action last year on this similar topic, a portion of funding came from this funding source to sponsor these events. You could also utilize a portion of your council discretionary funds. You have a total of $20,000 budgeted annually to that source. To date, for the current fiscal year, you've allocated $8,000 of that for a remainder of $12,000 that could be allocated, or some variation thereof. Happy to answer any questions the council has on the funding options. And our finance director is also virtual if we need to get in deeper than that. And I will hand it over to our Solano Avenue Association representatives to go into more depth.
Hi there, Council. The first thing I'd like to do is recognize some of the new faces I see here, namely Jennifer Hanson Romero, congratulations. Robin Lopez, of course, nice to meet you, sir. And John Mickey, congratulations on your new positions. I'd like to talk about public events. I'm going to go into the brief history of public events, starting off with the World's Fair in Chicago. Just kidding. Actually, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Solano Stroll. I'm going to divert most of the time. I understand you have lots of questions, and so rather than going into the details about the event, I want to preserve time this evening to answer questions that you may have. Just very quickly about the Solano Stroll, I'm very passionate about how much of a benefit it is to the city. Number one, it's a free event. In terms of equity and fairness these days, what can you do for free? Very little. You can go visit a park, visit a marina, but here you can actually visit a street festival, which is huge. In terms of providing artists a venue, we hire more bands and performers that day, on that single day, than the rest of the Berkeley commercial districts combined through the rest of the year. So 4th Street, through the course of their annual lineup, has about 12 bands. Telegraph hires a few. We have 80 performers just that day of the event. So there's a lot of features that I can go into, but I'm here to answer questions, and see that it goes through.
Thank you for that brief presentation. Any questions from council? Maybe not.
I'll add two things. So first of all, we do these quarterly Strollish events on the advice of a city consultant that said that we should be doing quarterly events. The Strollish events are all focused around specific benchmarks in time or the calendar. So for instance, the Juneteenth or the Strollish event in Juneteenth will be centered around Juneteenth. The Strollish event in April will be centered around Earth Day. And that kind of thing. So all of their events are thematic. They're all free, again, to the general public. The Strollish events are very much a focus on the businesses on Solano Avenue, whereas, of course, the Solano Stroll features the Mosquito Abatement District and a lot of other outside organizations. So we're really proud of our lineup. I mean, we're addressing a lot of different needs from a lot of different businesses, of course, the needs of the city consultant. And so we feel like we're aiming for all the targets we can aim for.
Thank you. Do one last check for questions. And seeing none, I believe we'll go to public.
No, I will lead with a question then. So Alan, thank you so much for coming and talking with us. And I understand this tends to be more of a yearly request from Solano Avenue Association. I will say I'm new to the finances of the city. I'm new to, SAA and all the work that you all do. And I keep thinking longer term. Do you have a sense of costs in the past versus costs you've come to this year with versus like what you expect over the next 5 years? And if you don't have an answer, that's okay. But I think I'm thinking about long term. How do we as a city account for this, right? So if you have any input on that, that'd be wonderful.
I mean, I can tell you a little bit about our financial architecture. I mean, obviously, COVID changed a lot in the world. And since COVID, we've lost a lot of vendors. We use the Solano Stroll as our flagship fundraiser. And we earn income by private donations or sponsorships, public donations and sponsorships, and vending spaces. And vending spaces actually is the largest bucket, believe it or not. And so 500 vendors average $500 a space. You can do some math. The reality is our vendor contingent has dropped to about 50%. Some of the stories behind why some of those vendors have stopped participating are actually tragic. But the reality is we have lost a lot of vendors, and as expenses go up, even bands these days, you used to hire a band for $375, and that pays for gas for their members these days. And so we're looking at an exponential increase on costs across the board, particularly in the areas of insurance. It costs a lot to insure this event, costs a lot to insure the board of directors that produces the event, the volunteer board of directors. I'm paid. So yeah, we're expecting a tremendous increase in costs. One of the items on the city budget, if you look at your document, is a $25,000 expense by the police department that is going to be used to incorporate the use of what's called meridian barriers to make the public safe. That's 50% of your costs. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of ways I think we can all look at opportunities to readjust expenditures in different areas. I'd love to take that $30 and put it into promotions or pay the bands more. So it's a big, you're stepping into this role, I think, in a very interesting time because we're all just kind of coming back to the table at the same time and seeing the same thing that you're seeing. I'm not sure if that answers the question. But
no, that's helpful.
It's really going to be an interesting year. We haven't even made an event budget because we're just anticipating so many different parameters to change, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Life never gets cheaper.
If there are no further questions from council, we'll go to public comment.
Yeah, good evening. This is Jeremiah Garrett Pinguello. I was wondering if you have information from last year, how much money Solano Avenue Association spent on the Solano Stroll, just a grand total of spending. I did the math, 500 vendors times $500 each is $250,000, $250,000. So, I mean, I guess you generate $250,000. Hypothetically, if you have 500 vendors spending $500, I do know that if you're a business in Albany and it's your first year being a business, your booth is free at no cost, considering you're a brand new business, it's your first year on Solano Stroll, first year being a business, there's no cost. I think that's a wonderful opportunity for small businesses to get their name out there. Also, the 80 bands or performers, I was just wondering how much it costs to pay each one. I know you mentioned $350, you know, buys them gas or something. I was just wondering if it's going to increase possibly to pay the bands, you know, more money. And also, like you said, this isn't just for Solano Stroll. This is for Strollish events, right? So maybe you have 80 bands on Solano Stroll, but you may have bands or performers quarterly throughout the year. So that's could be another, you know, 10 performers this 3 months, another performers this 3 months. I know you do the Stand on Solano. I'm not sure if Stand on Solano is a city funded program or Solano Avenue Association, but that's some funding right there. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't see why the city council wouldn't approve this. Solano Stroll is a great thing for our city. I would suggest the money come from the emergency relief fund instead of the discretional fund or the sugar sweetened beverage tax general fund. That way there's more funding available for other things that our city really benefits from, like, you know, more crossing guards. You know, crossing guards save lives. You know, so that's money well spent. Solano Stroll is fun, it's entertaining, and so I would suggest, you know, the money come from the emergency relief fund, because I guess we got to use it or lose it, and if we don't use it, we lose it, right? So, yeah, I would just approve city council, you know, funding this. I think it's a great benefit for our community. I'm not sure if this is the only time this agenda item is going to come up. I don't know if this is the only time the city is going to give money to Solano Avenue Association. I don't know if in August, before Solano Stroll, the city council agenda item is going to come up again for more money. Just wondering if is this a one-time thing right now, or later on in the year, Solano Avenue Association going to be asking for more money?
Thank you for your comment.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see the time. Thank you.
I believe we have one in the room.
Did you want to answer? I could, if you want me to.
Can you respond to Jeremiah's questions? We usually do it at the end, but it doesn't really matter. You can do it now if you want.
I mean, just, you know, Jeremiah, as always, thank you for calling in. 500 vendors was in our heyday. Last year we had 200. And yes, we do anticipate giving the bands a raise for sure. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm Todd Abbott, Albany resident business owner, and I'm on the board of the Solano Association. I guess I'm the vice president now of the Solano Association, and also on the board incoming, also on the. How did that? Okay. And board of the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm really interested in the mosquito abatement. That just sounds better and better every meeting I come to. Oh my goodness. So anyway, may not be a surprise. I've sat through all of this, which I always find the meetings interesting. I don't want to downplay it. But, and to speak in support of Solano Avenue Stroll, the idea occurred to me today, and I don't know why it didn't occur to me before, but if you look at, you know, the calendar days, if you want to find the day where Albany is the most diverse, has the most diverse population, that's the day of the Solano Stroll. From the vendors to the bands to, it's a free event, so people come from all over who may not have a lot of money to go do something else. They can come and enjoy the stroll. So that's an angle that really just occurred to me that I think is something to keep in mind. I really like the idea of this ultimately becoming a budget item. I think that it's there's no way that the city could begin to produce something like this on their own for this money. Not only, you know, some of the questions kind of suggest that the city is paying for the event. Well, no. I mean, this is a small portion. this money is being leveraged by Allen in particular, but also by Berkeley, and it produces a lot more bang for the buck than one could get, even with the full amount, not just this money we're asking for. So again, I encourage you to support this, the Solano Avenue stroll, and then attend it. All right, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I believe that brings it back to council discussion. Does anyone like to start us off?
Seems like a no-brainer to me. I'm very grateful to the association for bringing this back and persisting. We've heard some of the travails, the difficulty, the stress, so I am very appreciative. And so I guess, well, we'll get to a motion, but that's my thoughts on it.
I'll comment. I agree that this is something we should support. We get a lot of bang for our buck. My only issue with it, which I think I brought up the last time we discussed it, is that I personally don't love using ARPA funds for this. You know, I would agree that I would like this to be a part of our budget of, budgeting for supporting events in the city. And using ARPA funds is sort of putting off that decision of how to fit it in, because ARPA funds are one time. They're not going to, this is a thing that we want to keep supporting for years to come. We're not going to always be able to use ARPA funds to do that, which, necessitates a tricky conversation about where should the funding then come from. But that's my one issue.
I'll just state and comment, I appreciate the Solano stroll quite a lot, and for me it's very personal, and I'll try not to tear up a bit, but during the campaign trail, some of you are very much aware that my partner was severely injured, and during that time I felt very weak and vulnerable. I couldn't do things for my 12-year-old. Our life was centered around making sure that my wife was okay. And the Solano stroll was like one of these random things that happened at the right time for my 12-year-old to get out safely with their friends. And I remember going up to the stroll, and I seen my 12-year-olds just walking and smiling with their friends. And I hadn't seen that smile in weeks because of everything that's going on in our household with their mother. And it's little things like that that I think make this a no-brainer to support, that it not only bring community together, and as we heard from public comment, brings huge diversity of experiences, identities, cultural heritage, music. I remember when I was walking down, it went from like Celtic music to jazz real quick. I was like, I could dig that. That's dope. But nothing can replace seeing the smile on my 12-year-old's face during that time. And I just want to, again, express my deep gratitude for the people who do all the background work, because I know it's not easy. I'm seeing fingers being pointed at one person. It's not easy. And I know sometimes it's not easy coming before a city council and requesting funds and having to answer some of the tough questions, but I hope you're seeing right now during the session there are no tough questions. It seems like we want to support this, and we want to do our due diligence as leaders, respective leaders in this community, to support what's good for the community. And I love being able to support auxiliary events like Strollish events, being able to let my child go out and, just frolic the streets with their friends. Like that, to me, that's huge, to come from a community I was previously in where I would never allow my child to step outside that front door, no matter what time of the day it is, no matter who they're with, to being in a community here where we have these wonderful and amazing events year round from various organizations and entities throughout, for them just to feel like a child. I just want to make sure I throw out that personal note and remind you all that work you're doing is very incredible, and it does make a difference for families like mine that can't afford things or the finer things in life. But I can give my child $10 and they can pretend like they're bougie and go to Starbucks while they're walking down the stroll.
Yeah, I am really looking forward to this year's stroll so that, because I will not be a candidate, so I will actually get to enjoy the stroll. I think I spent the majority of the stroll in a booth. And then I did get a little break and I did get a chance to go down to, with my family, down to one of our favorite local restaurants and get some food. But I think, having the stroll back was really incredible this year. And you mentioned that there were fewer vendors this year. It didn't feel like that. And I know that hurt your bottom line, but I think for the people that were at the stroll, it was really incredible. And it was quite an event to be able to have people out and about and not have to worry about masks at that time. I really appreciate that you all have also expanded beyond the stroll, and that the strollish events, while they are starting up and they're getting their legs under them, that they'll be themed, and that there's something that we can look to as continually talking about Solano Avenue and the businesses there. And so I will say, when I first saw the numbers, and actually your conversation earlier helped me understand the numbers a little better, I had a little bit of sticker shock. But I also recognize that this is really talking about 5 events for us as a community. And I think a little bit about what the Parks Department is doing now with their big events of music in the park and whatnot, where they're also trying to bring the community together and thinking about how that brings people in. I was at quite a few of the events as a candidate again, so I didn't listen to a lot of music, but in talking to people, recognizing that, like you mentioned in your notes about the stroll, all of these events are bringing lots of people to Albany. They're introducing them to Albany, and it's something that no matter how much we put on our website, no matter how much advertising we try and do, these events where people actually come and experience our community, that's where we get the most bang of the buck. I will say I have long-term concerns about how we help assist this program, because it's not a line item now. It is something that shows up with you all coming with a request, and we're reacting. Do we have funds? Where do we find funds from? And so, it's not something we're going to decide tonight, but it is something that I would want to make sure as we start the mid-year, or I guess the mid-biannual budget, and then eventually get around to the new 2-year budget, that's something we really take into account.
I was just going to ask Nicole, if we were to budget this into something, where could we potentially pull funds from?
I had the answer to that question until the last part. It would be a general fund allocation, unless the council specified otherwise. Personally, I think that makes the most functional sense going forward, especially knowing that this is an annual events, plural. And we would need to, staff would need to analyze that overall expense on our revenue source and present that to the council as part of your budgeting process that's forthcoming. I am confident that we could incorporate it. It may mean that we'll need to look at our bottom line as we go from year to year. But that's something we can certainly analyze going forward. In terms of where it would be allocated, I would suggest that this is funded through economic development.
Thank you. And then you said so that could be when we meet about the budget, but for this particular instance, either to do a combination of the recovery funds. Now, the recovery funds, do we have a certain time frame to use them in?
We do, and I believe that's by 2024.
So it's coming up.
It is.
And there's very few things that we can use that money for, but this is really something that makes sense, correct?
Yeah, and the council has allocated a portion of the overall funding. I think you have an attachment. I'm remembering this. Yeah. Let's see. I thought it was an attachment. The Rescue Act.
Attachment 2?
Yeah. Thank you. So you see the business line item here, and actually what was already appropriated for the previous year. So that is a funding source. We do have, sorry, 2026, I was corrected. We could also allocate overall savings from the general fund to set that precedent for actions forthcoming with regard to budgeting.
Thank you.
Well, I'm in support of using Rescue Act funds because I think we've heard that the event is financially under some duress.
We're recovering. We didn't have it for 2 years. No, I'm serious. I mean, we're.
It's true. It's
Right. So I think there is a nexus there that is real, and we can provide direction. I don't know now if it's appropriate or during the budget process about what happens going forward. But I think for this year it makes sense. And also when I hear a reduction from 500 vendors to 200, I have to wonder if your appetite in asking for 15,000 was not great enough, given that we have Rescue Act funds, and now that I understand the level of duress that's involved. Now I don't know how the expenses of the event scale to the number of vendors. If you add a vendor, I guess there's more expense. I don't really know how it works.
Zero expense. Vendors only, it's pure income, unless they're a food vendor and they require a permit. But either way, we charge them for that permit. So it's pure profit.
So I guess I have to ask if you have less than half the revenue, 40% of the revenue, how is it even possible?
We are on borrowed funds. It's been a real ride. I mean, we took out a $250,000 EIDL loan to survive the last 2 years. And based on our trajectories, we can pull ourselves out of this hole. We just need the help. And if I can just say one other thing in terms of the budget rotation, it's really rough. This job is really rough. We essentially are doing a festival. We have to get permission from the two cities. Each year we do this, there's new council members, there's new, city staff or whatever the case is. And it's kind of like a dating process where you never really get married. You're still on the first date every time. And here it is, mid-February, we have an event, a major street festival that we have to plan for in 7 months. And it's just a real challenge. We still have to Berkeley's given us permission for this year, but it's just one of those things that we have to go through every year. So if there is a way to make this work so it gives us some sort of guarantee and that at least in this relationship we move in together, that would be great. I'm happy to first date every time too, but it just adds a lot of stress to my life personally where I'm wondering at night, is the city of Albany going to do this? Is the city of Berkeley going to do this? It's a lot to carry. It's a lot to carry. So just letting you know if there's a way to rotate it out. I think even you would appreciate it where you wouldn't have to address this annually and go through this. However that works. That's my 2 cents. Or 5 cents for inflation.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that comment because I do think it is one of those things where the city has moved to a 2-year budget so that we have some assurances. And there's a mid-course correction. But the idea that a major event, at least if we split the strollish from the stroll, to know that, yes, they're going to have to ask for permits and they're going to do this, but knowing that they are funded for 2 years from us would be beneficial. And again, that's not the question tonight, but to me, that makes so much more sense for us as a community, both from a funding side, from helping the SAA do the job that they do, the incredible job that they do. In terms of the funding, I think I'm open to it being all from ARPA. I'm open for the $20,000 for the strollish events, which are directly related to our businesses and the SSA, to be ARPA, and the other 15 from the general fund. I'm open to splits there, but I think if we have ARPA funds and we haven't used them, I think it is beneficial for us to consider using them now, because at least I've stated, I have a plan when it comes around to the budget to make sure that we're really talking about how we're funding this in the long term. So while it maybe sets a bad precedent for now, we know that the ARPA funds will go away and that we will have harder conversations about the general fund.
I will move that the city contribute $45,000 to the Solano Avenue Association from ARPA funds for the Solano Stroll and for the Strollish events.
Can I clarify what the language of the motion, what language of the motion is staff looking for? Because we're directing for something to be brought back, yes?
It's just convening on that, yeah. So I will adjust the dollar amount and come back with a resolution authorizing the allocation.
Presuming I get a second.
I'll second.
Can I ask for a clarification? Sorry, so you said 45,000. Do we want that broken down into 25 for the stroll and 20 for the strollish events, or are we allocating 45?
I would look for advice from the executive director on that. I mean, to me, it's kind of a bucket, but I can understand for future budgetary conversations, it wouldn't all be one bucket.
I believe the 5,000 would be, each strollish would be the 5,000. So yeah, if you wanted to break it down like that, yeah.
I would prefer, for my purposes, when it comes
budgetary.
back, that it's split.
Sure.
So 25 and 20.
I don't know if it's a friendly amendment because there's no second yet, but yes.
I did
you did
second it.
Sorry, that's right. Yes, so do we accept that amendment?
Yes.
We accept that amendment. Okay, thanks.
We have a motion and a second. City Clerk, can we please have the roll?
Councilmember Jordan.
Yes.
Councilmember Lopez.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mickey.
Yes.
Mayor Tiedemann.
Yes.
And Councilmember Hanson Romero.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Does that give staff everything you need? Thank you. And I'll point out on a process, there was a question in public comment of, will we be seeing this again? I think as we sort of just stated, this is our preliminary action. We'll be seeing it again to pass it once staff brings it back to us. But once we do that, that is our annual version of this for the year. But as we've discussed, we'll all be discussing it when we talk about our budget, which we all have interest in. And I think that closes out here. I'll point out for Alan, for your analogy, you would be cheating on us with Berkeley in that analogy. So maybe that's why we're not getting married yet.
Scandalous.
I believe that brings us to item 12, which is our council subcommittee reports. I will look around the dais, starting to my left. Vice Mayor, do you have any council subcommittee or regional body reports?
Sorry, this is that and other meetings with the public, is that correct?
Yes, whatever meetings you would like to report on.
So I attended the police and fire pension meeting in January, where we approved the distribution of funds, I believe. And then I listened in to the Alameda County Transportation Commission, which Preston was representing us, but Councilmember Preston Jordan. But I listened in to understand what I would have to do if I was, as the alternate, had to attend in his place. And then this past Sunday, I attended the Lunar New Year Festival that the API parent group put on at Ocean View.
Thank you, and thank you for attending the pension board. Councilmember Lopez.
I did attend the Dean's Advisory Committee on the Guild Track. Their first meeting is more or less everyone familiarizing ourselves with each person's respective capacity, but also discussing goals and ideas about things that they would like to see happen at the Guild Track. That's still all in its infancy. We're actively right now planning to have our next meeting in mid to late April. So hopefully more content at a later time.
Thank you. Councilmember Jordan.
Yeah, so thanks to Vice Mayor Mickey for attending as an alternate. That's really above and beyond the call of duty, so you're really doing your homework. Yeah, so I attended the Alameda County Transportation Commission meeting, and the main agenda item, and thank you, City Clerk, regarded something called the 7th Street. I don't remember what the G is for, but it's an underpass project to build a new underpass under the railroad 7th Street is the main access way to the Port of Oakland for drayage trucks that move containers. And if you can go to the next slide. So on the left is what it looks like now. Very substandard. It's only 14 feet high. You can see it's very narrow. It does have a pedestrian walkway, which is about 5 feet wide. Trucks regularly hit the underpass, which, as you can imagine, completely destroys the traffic pattern and the truck. I can't believe the underpass has survived this long. And on the right is the plan for what will be built. It will be built adjacent to the existing underpass. Right out the gates, for the commission, for my first meeting, we voted on a $20 million contract, which was only for pre-construction, construction, and post-construction management. So that wasn't even the construction. The construction is about $350 million. And of that, the agency was able to secure about $250 million from outside funding, with the other $100 million coming from the 1% sales tax that we all pay. So it's about a 2.5 times leverage. This should also help with the pollution load in that part of our county. Obviously, much more needs to be done on that, but this will at least relieve some of the congestion there. So that was the main item that was taken up in that meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Hanson-Romero.
I don't think I have anything to report on this one. It was just more of an introductory stop waste meeting. So.
Great, thank you. And I think surprisingly enough, I don't have any because the Vice Mayor intended the one that I couldn't make because of travel plans. I'll have lots more in the next 2 weeks. That brings us, do we have any public comment on that item? Forgot it last time, not gonna do so this time.
Thank you. It's Jeremiah Garrett Pinguello here. Yeah, Preston, you know, that 7th Street project, that I drive that pretty much every day or every night on my way to work. I'm a longshoreman at the Port of Oakland. And that project right there has been a long time coming. The reason for it is because it floods and traffic isn't able to flow through there. And it's right off the freeway exit from 880 South or 880 North. And that's the main thoroughfare. So that's really important for for our imports and exports to maintain moving. So that project's been in the works for years, and it's so nice to see it in the works. I'm the North Coast District Council representative for my union, ILW Local 75, and that's been on our North Coast agenda items for a couple years now. So yeah, that's a great project. I'm glad you are in the know about what's going on at the Port of Oakland.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any others? Okay. That brings us to future agenda items. And I'll go around the room in a second, but there are two I wanted to mention just because they were brought up several times in public comment. One is an item I've discussed with the city manager a couple times of a sort of holistic review of the city's communication policies that may be under discussion as part of the strategic plan. It may be its own thing. We're still figuring that out, but there will be a chance to sort of discuss that because this often gets pointed out for various things on its own, but I think it's important that we have a chance to discuss it sort of as its own thing, especially as that is kind of the promise we made when we sunsetted the Community Advisory Committee, or the Community Media Access, whatever, yeah. I'll also point out that this is a sort of a future agenda item, but or a future meeting. A couple of people have mentioned tonight the relationship between the City Council and AUSD. The city manager and I have also been working on preparing for possibly a 2x2 meeting between two of us and the two members of the AUSD board. So look out for that. We're sort of in initial talks for that and deciding what an agenda for that could look like. So there is a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and there may be an agenda or a meeting agenda released for that eventually. Any future agenda items from this side? From this side? Okay, that brings us to our announcements of city meetings and events. Any public comment on future agenda items?
Thank you, Mayor Tiedemann. Jeremiah Garrett Pinguelo here. Yeah, responding to the relationship with the ongoing relationship with the school district, I want to propose a future agenda item discussion of crossing guards, possibly adding to the budget. I mean, it seems during this city council meeting, we just throw away, we just throw, hey, 20,000 here, let's add 10,000, 15,000 to this. It would be nice that crossing guards were to be on some sort of future agenda item, maybe not next meeting, but some meeting, possible discussion on where money could be coming from. I think I sent the city council an email a couple days ago. I hope you all got it. It's state grants for school zones, for crossing guards, federal grants for crossing guards. I know the city of Albany is paying for crossing guards and the school district isn't paying anything. So maybe there could be a budget from the school district to pay for 6 more. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments? Seeing none. So please, I ask everyone to take a look at our upcoming meetings. We have several of them, including I think the first meeting of a couple advisory bodies that are getting staffed up. And finally, that brings us to adjournment. Thank you, fellow city council members, city clerk, city manager, city attorney, and everyone who stuck around with us all night, and everyone else who joined us earlier. And we are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mayor.